Hi,
Hi, Susan.
Kwang.
Hi, everybody. Hey, welcome to our first artist to artist meeting, conversation slash interview. And this is an idea that I've had for since the very beginning of MFA. And I finally, we're at the spot where we can make it work technically. And the website is flowing well enough. And my first conversations with Susan Lyon, and Susan and I have been friends for a long time. How long has it been?
Well, I was thinking about it. I probably met you. I met you at the Northwest Rendezvous show in Montana.
Was that the
And
first
I was
time?
probably about 28 or 29.
Wow.
And I was very shy and insecure. And I was in that show on a fluke. So I felt like a fraud. But
What?
yeah,
Hardly.
no,
I
I did. Then we could talk about all that stuff too. But my
Yeah.
heart is fluttering. I've been waiting for this. And so
Oh,
it's been exciting to think about and prepare mentally,
yeah.
um,
Wonderful.
because I feel like people need conversations like this. And, a lot of times you and I, we'd both go to those conferences and they're great. There's kinetic energy. Gosh, meeting people, it's exciting, but it's also can be very isolating and lonely. And you start to like compare yourself or judge yourself, like who's popular, who's not. And I think that intimate conversations are very
Yes.
important now. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I have been looking forward to talking with you too, actually. Not
Oh,
only just I think that this format, what I wanted to do with this the artist to artist idea is every time I talk to an artist, I learned something. I thought I knew everything
ah,
about, there's
yeah,
I have my habits and my ways of thinking about painting. And then I'll go see another artist paint and listen to them. I'm
yeah,
like, wow, that's really cool. So not only on that level, but
yeah,
on a deeper level, I
yeah.
realized that we all have there's an undercurrent of philosophy and things that we're growing individually as human beings, and that totally affects my painting. And the last year, reading some of your posts, um, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the year, you wrote something, and I was gonna get on there and write something, and I read yours and like I don't need to say anything. Susan said it so beautifully,
Well,
and
that really touched me. It really did. It's interesting how Facebook, Instagram can be polarizing, but then when you respect somebody and then they share something that you wrote,
yeah.
it lifted me up so much that I
Oh,
can't
beautiful.
describe. We can't know how we affect people. We really can't. We can just have a pure heart and hope that our intentions come across the way we want them to. But yeah, and I think I had started a personal Instagram page because I didn't want to put like my artwork on there. I wanted to put like
Mm,
books I was reading, things I was
mm,
thinking, websites that inspired me. And I have to get better at that because I still slightly, I have to say, there's still a part of me that is afraid to show everything, to
mm.
talk about everything. You want to put a glossy image on stuff, and when it's painful or life isn't maybe all happy, you never want to share that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, maybe if I started this second page, I will be more transparent,
Mm.
and not just be like promotion about, being a self-employed artist. So I really thank you for sharing that. And
Oh, that just
I'd actually had a lot of my friends say, oh my gosh, Kwang Ho shared your post. That is so cool. I mean, they were like shocked. So that was really cool. But
oh, that's so sweet. I didn't realize.
yeah.
That just make my heart even warmer just knowing that.
Oh,
But I honestly felt like you said it so beautifully and so from the heart that it was just perfect. It was real
oh,
humble. It
thank
was really
you.
beautiful. So that's why I've been wanting to talk to you about not only about art. So on that note, let's dive in a little bit. I have a few questions that we can go through
Okay.
about you as an artist, right?
Sure.
And I want this format to be uh, personal like that as well. But also, I want to be helpful for artists learning
Yeah.
to paint or halfway
Right.
through, maybe some things along the way. And I know that you might say you were shy and insecure, but I've been looking at your earlier work, and it just is crazy good. And
Well,
so,
thanks. Well, obviously my earlier work was before digital. And I think when we transferred to digital, we did move a lot of that work, but probably most of my earlier work is still on slides, and still in transparencies.
yes, got that.
Um, of course, so the pieces I had, I was telling Scott, I was like, I wish I could have found it. There was a few pieces that I really wanted to show, and I'm still going to find them and maybe post them, where it was the seedling of where, you see my work now, but still just not there yet, like harder edges, maybe, not a lot of understanding about lighting or this or that. So yeah, I mean, I tried to find my earliest work,
Yeah.
just to show, I guess. Yeah, I started off painting a lot of toys. And it's funny, I did for years. All I did was paint toys, and that because they made me happy, and I think
Oh,
they were less
when are you talking
intimidating
about?
than like flowers.
Yeah. When was that? I mean,
Oh gosh, when I lived at home when I went to art school. And then I met Scott while I was in art school, and he had graduated, and then we moved in together, and I painted toys for years, years and years.
that okay. So let's start there. Where did you go to art school, real quick? That whole.
Okay, I went to the American Academy of Art, and when I went there, it was an associate's degree, so it was pretty much graphic art, illustration. The fine art department was very small,
Mm-hmm.
and Scott Burdick had gone there, and Nancy Guzik and Rose Franson, Dan Gerhardt, Tim
Oh wow.
Lawson, Richard Schmidt. I mean, everybody, Ramel de la Torre, they had all gone there. And
Mm,
so there was this lineage that the teachers would talk about all the time.
mm,
And I went there with absolutely no history or background of art. I kind of got in there because my dad knew a teacher.
mm,
And so there goes my starting of like feeling like I had no business being an artist, because I talk to people a lot about talent. I'm curious what you think, Kwang, is, you know, I didn't have talent at all as an artist. I just had perseverance. I just
mm,
had drive. And I also had the ability, and I was lucky enough to meet Scott right when I first started painting. It
mm.
was sort of a blessing and a curse, because I met Scott and Richard and all these people. Like, really, I was 19. I had literally just picked up my first
19.
brush,
Wow.
and
Okay.
it was so
Did you do a lot of drawing and painting before that or not?
fun.
You're kidding me.
No, I
Wow.
remember being told that real artists sketched all the time, and that you should always have a sketchbook and you should always have a pencil.
Yeah.
But linear drawing to me it doesn't resonate. And it was I just the mere act of drawing, I would feel so bad about myself that I would give up. And so when I went to the American Academy, I thought I would go into like graphic design or magazine layout. That's how I thought. And
Mm-hmm.
I tell people this all the time, that it has everything to do with mentoring and relationships. And so there was two classes. One was life drawing, and one was like fundamentals, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't do well in fundamentals. I felt intimidated. I mean, I didn't really feel the teacher was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And the life drawing teacher was a grandfather character who was, maybe I just, it was like my spirit just went to him. He felt safe. And even though I had no business or no idea, or like nothing, like, I just want to do fine art, I had no clue how to do it. It was the
Mm.
worst in class. It
Wow.
was just his energy,
Mm.
his patience. I liked being around him. And he, would talk about Richard, and he would talk about Scott, and he would talk about Dan Gerhardt and all these wonderful people that he knew, and these students. And so it created this sort of fairy tale land of the maybe someday, hopefully, I'll be good enough to someday do something beautiful. And so, and then so the story goes is that I had told my dad, I said, "Oh my gosh, Dad, you really have to buy a Scott Burdick, because he's going to be famous." My
Mhm.
teacher, he's like this young artist who's like this genius. And so my dad had gone to the Palette and Chisel, which is an art club in Chicago, and they used to have these like Christmas shows. And he bought a painting for me and gave it to me for Christmas. And I happened to meet Scott like a month later, and I was like, "Oh my God, I have one of your paintings." And he said, "Oh, well, you should pose for us." This is at the Palette and Chisel. And I just was like screaming and laughing. And it was like I had, I had envisioned, I had brought that to me. I had wanted it so badly. I think I was kind of floating. I was unhappy. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had
At
started,
19, you're unhappy?
yeah, yeah, I was, I wasn't good in school and I didn't know what I was going to do. And my parents were, they had their own lives and their own things. And um, I remember vividly my senior year in high school, I used to get these cassette tapes and I would visualize. They were like guided meditations, and
Mm.
I would do them every day. And I
Mm.
would just do
Wow.
these guided meditations where they would talk you through it. And I would just envision this life that I wanted. And I would envision seeing myself, how I would look. And just my dream was if I could just do one thing beautiful, if I could do
Mm.
one thing beautiful. And it had nothing to do with like career or success, or I didn't have a clue about that. I didn't even know you could be a fine artist. And so I truly believe that I brought that to me because when I met Scott and Richard and everyone, not only was it so electric, there was so much of a chasm between my life before that and then after. It was extreme. The contrast was extreme.
Wow.
And I knew my life was going to change, but I also wasn't ready artistically. Like nowadays, I love the fact that these young artists, and I know you know some too, who are so eager and forth and proactive. And and they ask tons of questions. They want to show you the work and they want critiques. And believe me,
Mm.
for years, I would hide my work. And I would, if
How
I knew
many years?
someone was going to come, I would wash it off.
Oh
And
my
at
gosh.
school, I would cry all the time because I just didn't have an ounce of self-worth, and being around all those people who were so good, I felt so less than that. I just felt like I am a support character. I am going to be a support character to Scott. And so the dynamic was set right there where he was the star and I was like the tag along. And and it was interesting because in my 20s, I knew that I was getting opportunities because I knew Scott.
Mm.
But it was so difficult for me because I never felt like I could live up to them. And I
Mm.
always felt like I was getting things that I didn't deserve. And so when I brought up the Northwest Rendezvous thing, it was fascinating because we both had been asked to be in Northwest Rendezvous, which was this big show, you guys, in Montana.
Yeah.
And it had gone through some declining years and then it stopped and then it was coming back. And we
Mhm.
had a friend who was in it. He just said, well, we need to start the show again. Would you guys want to do it? And I'm like, they won't want me. What are you talking about? And
Mm.
they're like, no, no, we kind of need artists. So it was like, okay. And I got in on like a fluke, a
No, you
fluke. I
say
mean,
it, but I don't know about.
nobody wanted me there. I was
Oh,
painting
are you
toys
kidding?
in a Western show and scared to death to do those quick draws that they made us do. And it was torture for me. It was pure torture.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it's interesting. There is always everybody has their own little internal stories that they tell
Of
themselves.
course, of course.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that about you because Susan, by that time, I already know about your work, and I always thought it
I
was
don't
really
know
cool.
how.
So I don't know what you're talking about, but so how many? This is an interesting. How many years when you started out like that? How many years before you felt like, okay, now I know how to do something? You start liking your work, let's say.
Hmm. Hmm. I, you know, that's a loaded question. When did I start liking my
I'm still
work?
trying to like my work, so you can answer it however you want.
Yeah, no, I'm still right, exactly. I'm still trying to like my work.
Well, can I real quickly just go through a few so people can see. I'm going to share my screen and show some of
Okay,
your work real quick, and then
sure.
we'll go through that, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let me
Yeah.
see. Share screen, and we're going to do this.
Oh
And
my gosh.
oh
So
my
that
gosh,
that was a painting. That was like a 9 by 12. And that was a painting we did of a model when we first moved to North Carolina. So I was 26.
okay,
And, so that's interesting. So this was definitely one of the first paintings that I did it from a photograph. We had her come and pose from life, and then we would take photographs of the models afterwards. And I was really always scared to do anything larger than like a 9 by 12 or 11 by 14. I just didn't feel like I could paint any bigger. But this was maybe one of the first times when I did maybe dramatic lighting,
Yeah.
where you'd have something side and
Hmm.
um
And it seems like that's really, you've taken to that, but this is so beautiful in every
oh,
way.
well, thank you.
Your
Thank
edges,
you.
and you were 26 when you did this,
Yeah.
and you were
But
feeling
it's only a 9 by 12. So if you think about
what
it,
is
I mean, it's almost the same size as this image on the computer. The
no, it doesn't.
brushes were very tiny.
No, it doesn't matter though. I don't think size, making it bigger makes it
Well, then see, but
less.
you're Kwong. I think the bigger you go, the harder it is because you need to simplify more. So it's hard to make things that are larger not
Mhm.
look overworked or, I guess labored.
This is exquisite. But I'm just looking at the decisions you made. For example, I don't know if people can see, but the decision to make this edge connect to that and the shape of the hair coming down. I mean, when you were doing that at such a young age, you really saw
Oh my gosh.
wonderful
Well,
difference.
nowadays that would be middle-aged, right? There's so many people that are like 20 that are amazing.
Well,
Um,
that's true, but they have the benefit of the internet. Don't forget that.
that is true.
We'll talk about that in a while. But I want to go through some of these paintings real quick. And this is
Oh my gosh. So
watercolor.
I did this when I was like 20, 21. I did this when I was in school in a watercolor class.
Wow.
So this is on watercolor board, and this was from where I grew up. This is Oak Park, Illinois, and the
So that
certified
would make
land.
this 1 year after you said you didn't know how to do anything.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, this is probably one of the only good watercolors I've ever done. Well, and
Wow.
it's to me, it looks very it's more of an illustration. Maybe pure watercolors wouldn't think that this is, because I used gouache in areas, I'm sure. And
You do whatever you need to, but the thing is,
yeah.
the drawing is really good. And
Oh,
the first year, the first 4, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes you just struggle with the drawing. And this
yeah.
one, proportion and everything's like, it doesn't look like somebody who's just painted for 1 year, who's never painted before. So
Well,
just
thank you.
saying,
Oh
just
my
saying. Okay,
gosh.
so here's
Every time I see something, I laugh. Okay, so this was a still life that I did when I still lived at home. And I told you I painted toys for years.
yeah.
And this is probably like a 16 by 20 or something like that, or maybe, 16 by 20. So yeah. And I worked on this for probably a whole month.
Oh my
There
God.
is so much paint on this. So,
No
I mean,
kidding.
there's just layers and layers of dry brush. When I first are introduced to someone like Nikolai Feshin, and
Yeah,
then you go hog wild with dry brush and everything is dry brushed.
right.
So there's no transparency at all in this painting. But
So you were pretty young at that time still, and
yeah, I was probably like 21. Yeah.
yeah, wow, yeah. So this is an early part. If I dug out my old stuff, I know that feeling. Looking, I was like, oh my gosh, you could see so much more now, obviously, and what you would do. But this is wonderful that you shared this. This one's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I shared this one because um this was probably the first painting that I said to myself, because I had been going through a lot of struggles. I probably did this when I was 24 or 25. And,
Wow.
I'd been painting for, probably 4, 5 years, since school. And,
Yeah.
and I was always hating my work and I was always frustrated. And I think what also happened was I was very influenced by Scott. Now, Scott and I have never been one, people will probably be curious to know, like, he's never been someone who has critiqued me. And I think, that was something that I always wished. I wish Scott would come up to me and say, well, maybe you could do this or maybe you could do that. But we painted so differently that the few times that I did ask Scott when we were young, like very young in the 20s, and I would say, what do you think? He would always say, well, just make it thicker there, or just put some stroke, just make it thicker.
Yeah.
And it was so like I couldn't understand, I couldn't be in his head,
Right.
that we just realized that, oh, okay, well, we're just different. And
Yeah.
so what the problem was that I was influenced by him because he was such a fast painter and he
Mhm.
was able to, do a painting in a day or 2 days. And I the problem was that I was copying that because that's all I knew. So I was doing lots of paintings that I felt were mediocre. They were like done too fast without enough thought.
Hmm.
And this was the first painting that I said, I am going to take as long as it takes. And if it takes me 2 weeks, I'm going to spend 2 weeks
Beautiful.
drawing this out,
Yeah.
doing a little value, and like just, and you still see tons of hard edges and all that stuff, but it was the first time that I had done a still life. And this is probably maybe something like 22 by 36 or 24 by 30. It's about 36 inches wide by like 20 something.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was kind of big. So I remember those little milestones of telling myself internally that no, Susan, you're going to take as long as it takes,
Mm.
and you're not going to rush this painting. And so that's that memory from this painting.
And I think you make a really good point there. For years and years and years, I would learn by painting fast because I would paint from life, and I'm just
Hmm.
responding, putting that. And I was just talking to Adrian about this, and where I am right now after my big show in March. I have not done that many paintings. I've done a lot of studies. I've been thinking about it because I told her that I want to take as long as I want to in a painting and let it evolve and change. And that's where I am right now.
Hmm.
And it's so liberating to think like that because I don't know what it will look like, but
Right.
I realize, and my friend Daniel Sprick, who's my next door neighbor in Denver, and I watch him do a painting, and Dan is relentless. He will take 6 months on a painting if
Right.
he wants to, or a week on a little painting like this. And that's not my personality, but when I look at his work, I'm like, oh my God, that is so good. He makes such
Yeah.
beautiful choices. So you
Yeah.
do, I think, as something that I think would help an artist get better right away, it's just what you just did here. Just spend the time to become involved with the painting. It will inform you so much, right? I really
Well,
think,
yeah, I tend to like, I teach drawing a lot, and people will tell me things like, oh, how do you get soft edges? And I'm like, well, it takes time. There's a lot of gradual adding and softening and changing. I'll tell people like, drawings will take me a week or two. And, and it's like, you get the correct shapes, maybe within the first couple hours. It's all the choices. Then it's all the decision making on how to make it fine art. And a lot of times you might do things and change your mind. So it's not all linear. Like, you do have ebbs and flows. And I do know that Scott's work changed a lot too when he went from being just very, very fast to deliberate,
mhm,
really studying and just saying to yourself, okay, I want to make something with quality, and I don't need quantity. And I want to be proud of myself, and I want to grow. So if a drawing takes you, 3 days, or if it takes you 2 weeks, then that's how long it takes.
yeah. I think this is an interesting point. This is a real big point as an artist. I was talking to Dan Sprick about this, and I said, Dan, I mean, you think about Vermeer's work, and there's about 4 or 5 Vermeers that I think are really exceptional. And then there are artists who you see 1 or 2 works in the museums, and then you don't know much of the, and then when you see the whole body of work, it's okay.
Hmm.
But I realize that as an artist, if you have an opportunity to do one masterwork, if you do one work that is like,
Right.
I would be happy to see that in a museum, that's quite an accomplishment, actually.
Yes, you're creating something for posterity that will be your lineage. And I tell people, they don't believe me, but 80% of the stuff that I work on never sees the light of day. 80%.
Wow.
And um and that doesn't mean just like little sketches that you put in a shelf,
Yeah.
and then maybe show at a workshop. No, I'm talking like 80%. It was a good idea. I kind of changed my mind, or it didn't live up, or I ruined it. And so yeah, so this is one of the first, I went through a series in my mid 20s. So this was probably, I was maybe 27. We'd
Good
moved to North
Lord.
Carolina, and
Wow.
um I was really into trying to do these, like, using charcoal as a painting medium. So you use this dry powder and you use brush,
Yeah.
and then people are so fascinated by this technique. I mean, I first saw it by Richard Schmidt. He used acetone and he did these fascinating, drawings with that.
Hmm.
But I was people that the splattering has nothing to do, that's just fancy. It's like
Hmm.
getting the value relationships, getting the drawing down first, and then okay, then you decide, okay, how, dramatic do you want to be? Um,
Yeah.
People
Wow.
kind of want to jump to the fancy stuff. And I'm like, that really is, that's the least of it.
This is so beautiful. I mean, your drawing in here is
Oh,
exquisite.
thank you.
Good
But
gracious.
what I see, I mean, I see the light and dark being okay, but I also see very hard edges.
You do? Where?
Well, I mean, and it's funny because I think what happened was I went so soft for a while that
Yeah.
now I'm always giving advice to people like you must have both. You have to have soft and hard. You can't just have one or the other. And so in a way, when I look at some of the lines in these hands, I think, wow, there's some hard edges everywhere. But then it also balances all the mystery in the fantasy of the,
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, so I think I'm kind of trying to get back to a little bit of balance because I went really soft for a while.
Yeah. Well, I think, seeing that my paintings are more about rhythm than anything. And
Mhm.
on that level, there's a rhythm to the amount of soft and sharp edges because it leads the eye through all
Yeah,
of that. And
yeah.
so that becomes a real compositional or orchestral arrangement for me is where do I lead? How do I flow? So you have those sharps really make sense of all of these softer areas. But when you want, the thing is, these are holding my attention like crazy. That
Right.
little area, and then this disappearing into that is so beautiful, and that so cool. And there's shapes in here too. So if you did this at that early age, you knew so much that you're
Well, I
not.
have to tell you, I mean, I was very lucky because when I mentor people, oh my gosh, I mean, almost 100% of the time when I'm mentoring someone, a lot of it is what are you painting?
Mm,
Why are you interested in it? And good lighting.
mm,
When I critique people, I hate to say it, most of the time, it's like what they're painting from is not, conducive to making a beautiful painting.
yeah.
And so I was lucky enough to have Scott who knew about cameras and who was really good. So I could, I could never have done this on my own.
Mm,
And so that's why I'm so incredibly passionate right now in my life to share and to be the best mentor I can. And because it makes me the happiest, when I can share any sort of things with people and make their life easier and not have to deal with, the struggles. And because a lot of people are intimidated by cameras, by taking photographs,
yeah.
by, they don't even know what excites them. They see what other people paint, so they try and paint that.
Mhm.
And that's what happens when you first start being an artist, like you're inspired by Sargent or Richard Schmidt or somebody, and you try and do setups like that. But you kind of then have to like step up to the plate and you have to actually then create your own world. And so when you say that, a lot of this is lighting, do you have good lighting on your models? Do you have good references? Are you able to have a space for a model to pose from life? There's many times when I have visited artists and I know that they're figurative painters and we've gone to visit them and we think we're going to paint a model from life and they don't even have a setup. They don't
Mm.
even have lights or a place to put a model. And we're like, wow, like how, I mean, it's so, yeah. Anyways, okay. So this drawing is it's a
No,
charcoal.
wait. Before you go on, how often are you mentoring people? Is that an ongoing thing?
Yeah, no, it's an ongoing thing.
They can probably find you on your website.
Yeah, so I definitely do it through Patreon. I have like all these great art friends now, and I have Zooms all the time, and I feel like they've become great, my best friends. We talk about everything, and I feel like a lot of it is me just telling them that I understand and I give them advice, and it's just, I critique their work, and
Yeah,
I don't know, it's really been
I
a,
can imagine how valuable that is to get a chance to work with you,
oh,
being
well,
mentored, and really get a one-on-one situation like that. That's
I
great.
love it. I absolutely, it's my greatest joy right now.
Well,
So it's my favorite thing to do. And I feel like I think, we talked a little bit about like what would we tell our younger self, right? And when
yeah.
I was in my 20s, man, I was lonely. I was
Hmm.
intimidated. I didn't feel like there was even role models. it was before the internet. So like, how do the only way you could know about artists was from magazines, and the occasional, time you would go and do a Scott would do a workshop and we'd meet an artist. So it was this, we felt very alone. And anyways, okay, I'll talk about this and we can go about that later. This is
Okay.
a charcoal done as a watercolor.
What?
So
What do you mean by that?
so yeah, I use water and the charcoal dust, like, that you buy. And this is
So
my sister,
not charcoal
actually.
sticks. No charcoal sticks.
Well, no,
Just
yeah, it's probably some charcoal pencil and sticks, but it's really a lot of it is why it looks like a painting is because I used a brush and water with the powder.
amazing. This is so beautiful. These shapes out here,
Oh, thanks.
flow, the drawing in there, and that is so beautiful. You can just zoom in and look
Ah,
at the eye. Oh my gosh. You gotta be kidding me.
well, I mean, who knows what the, well, we'll see what, I don't know. Well,
Well, it shows me the attention and the sensitivity that you had, and you have still, of course, but at a very young age here, to that's not a small thing. I think a lot of times artists, when the work lack, what happened there? When the work lack um, the ability to hold my attention is because they've lost the attention to what they're doing, So let me see.
well, sometimes you always wonder if like when things are blown down like this, if they look better than in person, but
Oh,
um,
whatever.
this is actually a model that we met in Chicago, and her name is Dervila,
Yeah.
and she was Irish, and she had these long dreadlocks. So this was when I was experimenting a lot with this charcoal and like kind of watercolor.
You're still doing them, aren't you?
Well, I did them a lot at that time, and then I stopped doing that for years, and then I started doing charcoal again, probably like 3 years ago,
Wow, this
like
is
charcoal painting like that. Yeah.
yeah. I just love that. Just
Well,
the
it's done
oil
on
painting.
a watercolor board. So
Uh-huh.
it allows you to really paint and use water. Papers will just buckle, it won't
Yeah.
sustain it.
So are you using erasers to knock the highlights out, the light areas out?
Yeah,
You
that's
have-
probably a eraser. And I mean, I can't remember. It was a while ago. I would not be against using like gouache, but yeah, it's probably eraser. And a lot of times, yeah, I would protect the areas where I knew I wanted to keep the board white. I would protect it.
And then you can get that dark with powdered.
Yeah.
Char- Wow, cool. That's beautiful.
This
Wow.
is a little like I guess the resolution, but this is my niece and nephew, and this
Mhm.
was a photograph taken in an apartment that we lived in Chicago. So here's one of my toys, and
Mhm.
I remember, you get inspired by older paintings. So we used to do this all the time, like Zorn or Sargent or Mancini. And I think it was probably, Mancini had all those funky paintings with the little boys and all the quirky
Mhm.
stuff around them, and so we would try and do that too. Or this one was probably, I was inspired by Zorn because he would
Mhm.
have all those reflections in the floors of his paintings
Yeah.
leading to the backs. And I thought, I want to try to do a reflection on a floor.
Love it. Love that. He had that watercolor of the two girls doing hair braid. It was like in
Uh-huh.
watercolor. It was so beautiful and real sweet. That reminded me of that a little bit.
This is actually a very tiny painting. So we're looking at it so big. This is a 8 by 6 or 6 by 8.
Oh wow.
And this is a little painting from Spain, probably from 1995 or six.
You did
Yes.
that location probably right there, yeah?
No, this was done from a photo. We did
It is.
paint on location every
Mhm.
day, like 2 or 3
Mhm.
times a day. But this little painting, because of the people, I did it from this photo. But yeah, no, it's tiny painting. It's only a 6 by 8.
Love that.
And
This
this
is
is,
really rich. Wow.
thank you. This was from 1999.
Yeah.
And this was a painting from the Forbidden City. So we went to go see the Forbidden City before it really got, populated. There was nobody there.
Yeah.
And this was like the only shop in the Forbidden City to get any beverages at that time. And it was this tea shop. And I remember just loving, so this was done from a photo. It was probably about 8 by 15 or 10 by 15. And
Mhm.
yeah, I did. Yeah. So I did this from a photo right after our trip.
Cool. So 1999,
Mhm.
and this one.
This is toys and two of my cats. So you see one of my cats on the left and one of my cats
Oh,
on the right.
right
And
there, right
yeah.
there. I
And
see them.
so there you go. I didn't lie. I mean, the resolution isn't great, but this was probably done, yeah, about somewhere late 90s. You know, I tried to give you, when you asked for earlier work, I tried to make sure the earlier work was all older than 20 years.
That's wow. Is it late 90s? It's 20 years old. Oh my God. Okay. My
Yeah.
mind just got blown. Yeah, I don't keep track of time. I just don't do time. So I don't know.
I
No,
I agree.
what I love here is your pattern of light. It's so cool the way you structured the light and how it's, like there could be 4 or 5 toys in there, but it doesn't matter. There's just one big light shape. The cat's part of the rabbit and the rabbit's part of that rabbit. And that's the abstraction that I love in artwork. I see that design first and then everything else details.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But
Yeah.
that's so cool. And this one?
So this is the same model as that first one.
Yeah.
And so it was really, I was trying, the other one was dramatic lighting on the other side, and this is dramatic lighting on the left. The
Mhm.
funny thing is that I see such a huge error in this painting. I made the whites of the eyes, especially the white of the eye that's closest to us, too bright.
Mm.
And that's the first thing that I noticed. I'm like, holy cow. And everybody does it, so it's when I'm critiquing people, that's one of the main things I'm telling people is to keep that, that value within the eye socket and don't have it come forward. And well, there you go.
You could
I
you
did
could
it too.
ask for it back and just glaze a little value on it.
Oh, sure. I have no idea where it is, but if anybody sees this and they want to send it back to me, I will definitely do that.
That's great. That's great. And this is an earlier one too?
Yes, so this is a 10 by 8, so it's very tiny, and it's a model named Tasha, and she was a great model at the Pout and Chisel. So this is when we lived at the Pout and Chisel. I did do it from a photograph because of this lighting, and so it was, yeah, somewhere in the mid to late 90s.
What I love is the purple on that nose. Like, how would you even think of that? That incredible purple out there. And yeah, the color is really surprising to me.
I look at some of these older paintings too, and I think about I was so much more colorful then. Probably I was maybe braver. I don't know. I have to get some of that back.
Now, were you intentionally pushing colors this direction?
Probably. I mean, I think like I was very influenced by Scott. He's always been very colorful. We
Yeah,
love to do this
wonderful.
sort of interesting double light.
Yeah,
And this was before you could even manipulate your photos or work in Photoshop. So this was directly just from a photo you would get printed from like Kmart.
right.
And
You can be sure the color is not like that.
well, yeah, so it's interesting. I'm sure, of course, I did push it. Like I mean, it obviously didn't have purples in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know who this person is. I'll have to try and channel her again.
That's great. That's wonderful. Okay, so now I believe I'm going to stop share and go back to our screen here. And so that was just a little quick tour of your earlier work. And looking back at them now, what do you remember? I wanted to ask you, do you remember some aha moments along that line where you work literally changed or you thought differently as an artist?
Well, probably one of the first ones was definitely thinking about taking as long on a painting as possible.
Oh, wow.
Um, then I'm trying to, you know, it's interesting, aha moments. That is such a great question because, you know, I feel like a lot of my life has been fuzzy and I'm searching for something and I never felt good enough. And it's weird, like aha moments. I'll have to think about that one, Kwong. I mean, one of the things I tell people though is that probably about 12 years ago, I how do you know I'd had an illness and it was one of those things. I don't know if it was a virus or one of those mystery illnesses that people get and go to 20 doctors and nothing seems to help. And so I wasn't able to paint. And what I could do, even though I wasn't drawing, I had kind of stopped drawing for a while.
Hmm.
And probably was focused on painting from photographs from trips.
Hmm.
Because, okay, so this might be a good conversation. So what happened was, we started to travel and we would do shows from these trips, and they would be, successful, and people liked them, and the galleries were interested in them because they had a theme. They were easy to promote. And then what happened was then we just became known as the travel painters. And that's all people wanted from us. And so I know that there was a time when I started to get a ton of anxiety because instead of, fluctuating and being able to experiment and do still lifes and, these drawings and all this stuff, all of a sudden, I remember vividly having a show from that China.
Hmm.
And so we went to China in 1999. We had this big show, and I remember physically getting sick because of the stress of knowing that I only could paint that for this, like, next 8 months, right?
Oh
That's
my God.
all you could do, was like you had to do stuff from photos. And it was like, for me mentally, it was like, oh my gosh, just produce, 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 get 20, 30 paintings. And like physically at the end, it was painful. Like, I mean, I've had times when I've been painting for shows and I knew it wasn't my true self. I knew I shouldn't be doing this. Yet for whatever reason, I was like painfully kept painting and painting and painting and hating what I'm painting. But I felt like this mythological thing where I'm just putting paint on a brush and painting, yet wishing I wasn't.
Hmm.
And so those were revelations to me about, even though in 1999, after having that show, and feeling sick and then not painting for like a month or two after, because I never wanted to paint again. I just hated that feeling.
Yeah.
Of course, then I time, and then I started all over again. And it's like a sickness, it's so I know that that was building up in me. I know that these decisions of like whatever success meant, and
Hmm.
this might not be answering your question, but this is what I want to talk about, is that it's like, I was programmed from me, seeing Richard and Scott and all these successful artists, and then wanting, I guess, to be in that direction and seeing the praise they got. And I liked being around it. And even though I wasn't as good an artist, to bask in their light, and then just hoping and praying that I will be good enough. But yet I didn't know who I was. I did not have any clue what my pure talents were because I was so influenced by them. And so, years and years, the cycle of just keep painting. And I know I look back at some years of my work and I think, wow, that was a really sad year. Like I must have,
I've had those.
yeah, like
I've
like I was in a slump, and I obviously my heart wasn't in it. And so anyways, so I got this illness, and I think I was just fed up with my life. So I decided to go, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit in my living room and I can just draw on my lap.
Mm.
And I didn't have the energy to do anything else. So I remember, and I don't know if I just had this impulse that was downloaded to me or something about, when you start to ask these internal questions about like, what are you really inspired by? If you were on a desert island and you have this question posed to you, like you only could paint one thing, you could only do one thing. What is your intuition? Do I even know what my intuition is? And I remember it was like, I love faces. I'm addicted. I just love it. It's like a baby. I love staring at people. I love walking over the curves. I like looking at all the different forms. I love character and lighting, and I love old photography, and I'm fascinated by sepia. And so all these visions and all these things were coming to me, and so I just decided, well, I'm just going to take these sepia colored pastel pencils and only use in one, and just and since I didn't have energy, I just love the idea of the rubbing, just the, like, you put pastel. I remember the very first time I even touched any drawing materials was a pastel in high school, like senior year, and just putting it on paper, and the tactileness of my finger touching the paper, it was so meditating that it soothed me. It was like, when people tap, or they have, like, they're petting like someone's petting your hair. That was like spiritually to me. I love that soothing of that feeling. And so that's kind of where it all came out, was like whenever I started to draw again, was just doing these sepia drawings and just thinking about rubbing and how the soothing feeling made me feel better. And it's funny, and it opened doors for me that I never knew, because I had been sick, on and off for about 2 or 3 years. And um, somehow I got a drawing in something. I can't remember if I entered it in something or whatever, but there was this one drawing that had been in a magazine, and a lady had seen it. And it was the very first year they did those Weekend with the Masters. It was in Colorado Springs. And they're like, we're starting this new thing, and it's called Weekend with the Masters. And David LaFell and Jeremy Lipkin and Mary White and all these people and Scott and you. And I'm like, what? Like, there's no way. What are you talking about? And I remember Scott saying, oh, they want you to teach. They want you to teach. And I'm like, this is a joke. This is a joke. And I was like, there's no way. It's just, she saw your drawing in the magazine. And I said, what? And I thought, okay, I'm going to sabotage this, because that's what I do. I sabotage everything. So I told them, I go, well, I can't teach how to paint. I can't teach how to draw. I'm not good enough to do that. But I said, I can maybe do quick sketch. And I thought, they're going to say no to this. They are going to say no to quick sketch. And I will be off the hook, and I'll be like, hoo, hoo, hoo. They said, perfectly fine. I'm like, what? I get to teach quick sketch? So anyways, so that was kind of that. So you see, when you look back at your life, these like doors closing and these doors openings, and you understand this, how you're calling things to you. And I realized that even though I didn't understand why it happened, all of a sudden I was considered somehow good enough to be a part of this small elite group. And no matter how much I tried to talk them out of it or tell people I didn't belong or whatever, somehow it forced me to go there. And then, little by little by little, but I've always been pushing back against, success or having a spotlight on me. And so, yeah, it's just interesting. And who knows if that even answered your question, but
Actually, you've answered something really important. And I think we're going to talk about this more on the other part of the philosophy part. But what it showed me, because we all, as young artists, you try to make a living at it. I did. I was competent enough to do a good painting and dumb enough to get excited about that and not think any more of it than that, and put it out and it sells, like, oh boy, and then do another one. And I got better along the way. But halfway through, the pressure of the deadline for these shows, after a while, I was doing a painting because I have to do another painting. And then after a while, that becomes the driving, and you forget why you're doing it, which is, and what I realized, what you were saying is that at some point along the way, you got sick, you didn't want to do anymore. It's because you were going against the grain of what this inner voice is telling you. And when you stop and you started drawing on your lap, you call it self-love if you want to, you allowing yourself to love who you are and what you do, and the heck with everybody else. And guess what? It opens up all kinds of new ideas and new paintings that you're learning to paint like yourself. You forget the influences, you forget the data, you forget the past, and you follow your own interest. And I just love hearing you talk about the things that you love, the faces and the form turning, or the touch of the paper. It's like love, and your work is only as deep as your love will go. And I love that quote. I listened to it some more, and I thought that was so beautiful, is your work is only as deep as your love is.
I agree.
And if a person, like you saying, you're mentoring, you see people bring photographs that they want to paint, and it looks, I'm like, I've had that experience with students before, and in front of a class, and I asked, trying to find something good about it. But in the end, I asked her, well, what about this photograph that you want to paint? Why do you want to paint it? And she says, I don't know. It's just a Ferris wheel that I see on the way home, and I just took a bad photograph, and I just want to paint. But it's not enough attention. You don't start a painting until you love something about it,
Right.
And then that's a really key ingredient. And so
it's one of probably the past 5 years is the conversation I've had with my close friends is, what is my intuition telling me? because I felt like I had no idea. Like, we're not taught to
Right.
listen to our intuition, to know what that voice sounds like.
Mhm.
And, like me getting sick, or life brings challenges to people and it forces you to make right corners or turns.
Right.
Um, I had been so programmed to think about what a successful life would be.
Mhm.
And I know that people envisioned or projected onto me thinking that, oh, you're in that show or this or that, it must be so happy.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole other side to it. I remember vividly when I was like very early, like 19, seeing two older artists and I having a show. And I remember telling them, I go, you must be so excited, like every naive person says. And they're like, oh my gosh, you must be so happy. This is like, and they just like burst out crying, because they know, meaning that they're so stressed out, that the
Oh,
stress of being on show and putting yourself out there and,
wow.
wishing that you could do better and, and comparing yourself to others is so heavy that
Mm.
we all think that it's so fun to be a gallery artist. And it's tricky. It's difficult. I'm sure you get a lot of people asking you questions like, what's your advice on galleries? And I'm like, it's like dating, it's trick. You have to feel that they are into you and that it's not all one-sided, you just wanting to be with them. They have to want to be with you too. And do they respect you? Do they treat you well?
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
and maybe not go for the most well-known gallery, go for a smaller gallery that really loves your work, because they're going to work for you and you're not going to be the small cog
Yes.
in the
Yes.
big wheel.
Yeah, I'm totally with that. All of my galleries have been small galleries, have done really well for me, and they are my best friends, the
Yeah.
gallery owners. I've never, and I had a post on my Facebook that I just said, artist, this is the only time I want to yell on Facebook, do not ever sign a contract. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You need to know what the percentage is.
Right,
One of
right.
my galleries in Houston, this is how good it was. This is how good this relationship was. She agreed to do a solo show for me. I sent all this work and I talked about it. And when it came time to talk about business, I said, Martha Myers, she was such a dear friend in the end. She said, well, what's the percentage, And she says, whatever you want, Kwong. I'm like, what do you mean, whatever you want, Kwong? So I gave her 40%, 60%, like normal.
Uh-huh.
And she was ready to say, whatever you want.
Yeah.
How amazing is that?
No,
And she's a small
yeah.
gallery in Houston, and she brought all these friends to me. But that's the kind of relationship I've had with every single gallery. It just,
Yeah.
not. I actually gave a raise to one of my gallery in Vale, and Bill Ray at Claggett Ray he's so wonderful. One of the best gallery dealer. He is on the side of the artist, and he talked me a long time ago. He got me into the gallery with a really sweet percentage, and I saw how hard he works. So I gave him a raise to 40%, and we had dinner, and he walked out. I said, "On all my life, no artist ever given me a raise before," and I was just cracking up. But they earn it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and if they earn it, there's loyalty. I
Yeah.
think that obviously galleries deal with artists that we maybe don't treat them well, but it's both sides. If there's
Yeah.
loyalty and they work for you, we'll do anything. We will but definitely nowadays too, you have to be self motivated. I mean,
Agree.
you can't expect. What I think happens is artists hope that they're going to find this magic fairy tale and that gallery is going to make your career, and it's not.
No.
You have to be your own boss.
Yeah.
And you brought up Daniel Sprick. I think the first time I ever met him, we were all asking him questions, and he said that, well, he doesn't think about shows or galleries. He just does 50 paintings and then he figures out where he's going to have a show. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
to have that sort of like confidence and just knowing that it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
But
Dan is mystical in that way. I have to tell
yeah,
you. I
yeah,
just love that guy. More and more as I know Dan, I admire him so much more. He has that mystical way of just trusting that things will work out, and it does. And in the
well,
meantime, he just makes beautiful paintings, not for
yeah,
anybody, for
yeah,
himself, what
yeah.
interests him. And there's a lot to learn about that. But I mean, we have so much to talk about. Well, real quickly before we go on to the other things, I wanted to ask you if uh, on a real basic fun thing in the studio.
Yeah.
What's your setup like? I don't even know what that looks like. You
Oh,
you paint with Northlight or normal?
no. Well, I have a studio at home, which is like a little building outside, and that does have north light, but I also use daylight fluorescence. I primarily paint now at a studio that is about a half hour from me in downtown Winston-Salem, and
Mhm,
it's in an arts building.
mhm.
And I just have fluorescence.
Okay.
And then
So
I use like, other all kinds of different lighting. But it's interesting. I tell people, and I don't know if it's my nervous system, but I love not knowing what time it is and what the temperature is outside. So if I had a big window, I think I would be so distracted by, is it gorgeous out?
interesting.
Is it rainy out? Is it nighttime? Is it daytime? I like being in my cocoon.
Mm.
So yeah,
That's cool. Now, the other question, a lot. This is an argument, or not a discussion,
argument.
I suppose, about some people are strictly, paint from life, and I used to paint from life. That's all I did. But now I work from photograph
Uh-huh.
because the photograph is like note taking for me. So
Yeah,
in the old days, you go out take notes with a sketch.
yeah,
And in fact, right now I'm doing sketches with gouache and watercolor, and I'm having a blast. It took me a week long to
yeah.
get my butt kicked one into the other, but then just yesterday I felt like, I got it. But so now I can't wait to get out. But these sketches are now informing me for the next series of oil paintings, and so the photograph, when you're on the go all the time, you have a model that you can't just work one pose. I'm perfectly good with working with a photograph because I change it and do whatever with it anyway. So I'm just wondering how you feel about that part of.
Well, I'm glad you asked because, that's tricky because Scott and I have always worked from references. We'll say, I mean, we love working from live, believe me. And I think probably one of the reasons why I started to get really antsy and not like my work was because I felt so much pressure to only work from photos and do these trips
Mm,
that it was killing me inside.
mm,
Um, but you know what I really want to stand up against is I want to stand up against that that idea that there is a right way and a wrong way, because it gets me very frustrated when I see very well-known, respected artists shame other artists for things that they do and saying that you're not a real artist if you do this, you're not a real artist if you do that. And there's so many people out there that just want to create and want to use that creative spirit in themselves.
beautiful.
And what happens is they get this internal story then that they really will never be as good because they don't have the opportunity to have a Northlight studio. They don't, they have a back issue and they have to sit, they can't stand. So that gets me riled up when I feel like there's this judgment that you only should do it this way or you should only do it that way. And I feel that all people should create and that the goal is not to be a gallery artist. That shouldn't be your goal to like put things into frames and sell them. It is your goal to express yourself. And
Mhm,
my passion is to, give any sort of information to people, how to make it as easy as possible. Like
mhm,
how, to not think of it as something that is so beyond your ability that, only geniuses do, but no, that you can do it, and that it doesn't even take talent. It takes perseverance. It takes grit. It takes somebody who's willing to put the time in and enjoy the process and to realize that, yeah, you're going to, have a ton of paintings that don't work out, but do you have fun? And are you willing to do those 500 paintings,
that's right.
for practice? And
Now, are you curious enough to put in the
yes,
work?
yeah,
Yeah, and I think you're right. When I hear an artist with a lot of opinions about right thing and wrong thing to do like that, it's just an opinion, and I'll listen to it. That's great, but in the end, it's like what you said. You develop, you learn. I think ultimately, an artist, you practice your skill, you learn as much as you can about how to use values, understand all that, but then you have to really solve your own problems. until it makes sense to you,
Mm-hmm.
it's just someone else's idea, somebody can
Right.
give you a
Exactly.
idea, but yeah. So, and that's where it is right now for me. I've learned all this stuff, but now I'm trying to get really lost and then come back. And that's really what I'm really excited about, because I understand. It's like I'm a good mechanic now. Whatever the
Right.
car breaks down the middle, I can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about paintings, of course.
Yeah.
But so I want to get as lost as possible, and then bring myself back. And one of the area that I think I'm the weakest at is color. And that's why I love your color. And Adrian is wonderful colorist,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and Scott's a wonderful colorist. And for me, it's like the final frontier. I'm just I can't wait to learn more about it. And I get so frustrated because I'll work on a painting for one of them for 5 years. And I looked at it and it looked horrible. The colors are not at all what I thought I had in mind. And then after, like right before the booth show I had there, just the last 2 months, I finally dove into it, and I had to really surprise myself with it, like threw stuff in that I wouldn't expect. And then all of a sudden I saw it, and then I finished it. And then and then I did that painting again, smaller size, and a whole completely a different set of color harmony. And bam, it was like that. So sometimes it takes that long of just digging and digging and digging an idea before.
Yeah. Staying with it
Yeah,
and just knowing that, that's what you were meant to do, and
yeah,
knowing that's your calling, and having those impulses, following impulses
yes,
is a very important thing. I know people who have the impulses, but they don't follow them.
because
And I guess, hmm,
because of fear.
because of fear, and because, yeah, it's interesting. I'm always wondering, like, why, yeah, like, where do these ideas come from, right? Where, when you feel you're most creative, when you feel that this is what you should be doing, where does it come from? And like I said, I think I was like pushing, didn't know myself, and I'd put a wall up between me and my intuition for years. And then, I was yearning for it. I was being called towards it. And um, it became like this question. I was asking, like, what am I meant to paint? Who am I supposed to be? Like, how am I supposed to help people? Like, all this stuff. And I'd get these little answers. Um, and
Mm,
probably the last 3 years, it's been pretty intense. And so
good.
anybody like knows me really closely is like, this is the only thing I talk about is, how do you know truly who you are, and how do you tap into that? And for a long time it
Mm,
was me, how do I stop being afraid of my studio? How do
mhm,
I stop being afraid of that room that means that it could be failure, and who knows, maybe it could be success. Maybe subconsciously I was afraid of success too, but um it could be. And I know people who are very, very scared. They procrastinate and they procrastinate because it, it's just too scary for them to tap into that. And I guess also a big thing for me was changing my perspective on like what my career was to look like. And I finally had to stop wishing for certain outcomes.
mm,
Um, like I still like praying or meditating or wishing, envisioning for like, if only a certain show would go well, or this or that, or like maybe this or maybe that, and realizing that that was not where it's at.
mm,
I was so mistaken about what I should be asking for and what I should be feeling. And and a lot of it was me just breaking down and getting to the point where I was so sick of myself. I was so sick of my direction that finally it was, okay, I will be open to anything.
whoa.
I am going to be open to anything. Just let it come. And I just want to use any skills, any talents, any sort of advice and share it. And and just,
Wait, so you were asked that? That's a beautiful question. You sat down
I,
and
for days and months.
asked. And
Yes.
when was that? When
That
was?
was, I mean, that's been it's been ongoing slowly. I mean, I started a very, very strong meditation practice about 3 years ago. I've been on and off and I've done things,
Yeah.
but I mean, a very intense one starting 3 years ago. And And so there was a lot of digging and a lot of sitting and a lot of first
Mm.
asking and not knowing what to even ask and not knowing what words to use. And people
Wow.
get caught up on words. They
Yeah.
want to know exactly like, how do I even phrase it? Or what should I even be thinking? And then you get past that. And then you just know that it's all about just, okay, whatever situation is in front of me, I know I'm not a victim. I know that I have complete control over my emotions and my perspective and my outlook.
Mm.
And so that I am bigger than any sort of bodily condition or any sort of like situation I'm in. And once you can kind of change that and you can sit with that and realize that roadblocks are just opportunities to
Mm.
then like see yourself become more powerful and see yourself sit and know that you, like your friend Daniel Sprick, knowing that things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because I think what happened was had a lot of fear.
Hmm.
Like the fear was building up in my body and it was creating illnesses and it was creating
Yes.
anxiety and it was all these weird things were happening to me. And that's what everyone says. Your body tells you these things until you if you don't listen, it makes
That's
it
right.
louder. And if you don't listen, it makes it louder to really where you are forced to listen.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think a lot of things changed for me when I was like, whatever comes to me, I am so open. I am so open to if I turn out to be like all of a sudden I become a neuroscientist or I'm going to run for office or I turn into a yoga teacher. I don't care what it is.
Wow. Okay.
Whatever my future is, I am
Yeah.
completely okay with it and I just want it. And so those are shifts that everyone has to make sooner or later.
Yeah. And when it's interesting when I listen to you, it's interesting that there's one side of you that tells you to be afraid and all these expectations, and this other side of you which knows that if you follow that until that side finally says, okay, screw it, I'm just okay, whatever, right? And have you heard of Paul Selig?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I got a
Yeah.
beautiful idea from him.
Yeah.
And that is, he talks about the small self, your small
Hmm.
self versus your true self.
Right.
And the small self is the one that worries and thinks and have all kinds of ideas, but it's the one that's really afraid. Whereas the true self knows. And I
Hmm.
love that. It's clarified 30 years of reading philosophy and meditating. And now I'm saying, yeah, I like it because Adrian and I talked about it. And I love the fact that the phrase the small self is used and not the ego, because
Hmm.
it's really the ego. But the ego has a weird sound to it.
Yeah.
The small self implies that it's still you, but it's not the real you. This
Yeah.
this little baby you can carry
Yeah.
around on his
Yeah.
back. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but so that really, it's part of that growing and this is what I wanted to talk to you about, is that certainly when you get to a point where you start to ask questions, where you say, okay, I don't know anything, tell me. And it's amazing when you start asking questions what
It is.
happens. But when you start deciding this is this is that, that's the small self, really. It's really interesting how that works.
Yeah. Well, and that's when you start to realize that if you, sit long enough and you ask long enough and you see synchronicities and you acknowledge them and you realize that there is energy out there. And, for a long time, I was always been afraid of like, you know, abundance, that there wasn't enough somehow. And I still have that tiny little puppet in my head so every now and then, and I have to giggle at it. And I have a friend that we would talk about this, that whenever these little things would come up and we say, if we could just giggle at it and say, oh, isn't that funny? Look at that little thought coming up. And yes, you think that there's not enough. Oh, you think, but oh, that's just so funny because you know that there is. And, and just realizing that there's so much that we don't know. So if we can just admit that we don't know it and be open to the fact that there's infinite possibilities. And,
Infinite.
and I loved how you said that in the beginning. I don't know if it was recorded about that you don't believe in time. And I don't believe in time either. And it's fascinating about people who do, because they never have enough of it. And I always seem to have more than I could ever want. Like I have too much time. I have too much time.
I love that. It's,
And
it's not that I don't believe in time. I don't do time.
okay, you don't do it. Well, I believe time is so malleable, because I find that it cracks me up that people are always telling me they don't have enough time in the day. And I'm like, I have too much time in the day. Sometimes I'm halfway through my day and I go, what else am I going to do today? Wow.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I wish that was true for me. Now we've speaking of time, I just looked, we're over an hour, but I want to ask you a couple things.
Okay.
I'm really excited that you've agreed, you and Scott both have agreed to be part of MFA, which is this is a concept that Foster and I had, almost 2 years ago now. And we're trying to create, I feel like with the way information is being passed right now, and there's so many artists, it can be shared like that. And I produced like 3 or 4 DVDs a long time ago, and they did really well. Everything I know about art, called Nuts and Bolts, and then I did one on still life, and they were still on DVD discs, and I sold those forever. And then now it's on MFA. So, when you join it, I'm trying to create a big community for practically nothing, $30 a month. You can learn everything you want to know about painting. And so I have my curriculum, but I know that you and Scott can offer, a whole, I watched Scott do a painting with yellow ochre and green or some ungodly thing like that. What do you do? And it looks amazing. Like what? And so I can't wait to
Yeah, we're so happy. Thank you for asking us. And of course, we love to share anything with you guys. And there's a lot now. I mean, how lucky are people, right?
I
I mean,
know.
we can talk to people. I do Zoom critiques with people in Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah.
It's amazing who we can touch. I know that there are people who are going to watch this who live in India.
Wow.
And when I first started, I felt so isolated that if I had the opportunity to click on a video or hear an interview with a woman artist, because that's what I craved. I craved when I was younger. There just weren't even women faces. I mean, it was such a male dominant
Wow.
career that you don't even think of yourself as important enough. It was always the token woman. And there's still shows where it's very much a token women energy. And I don't know, I just want to be that for someone and say, you know what, hang in there, that it's not about whatever you think this fantasy of success is how happy are you when you create?
Yeah.
That it shouldn't be a struggle. I wish that I didn't have decades of struggle. I wish that it would have been more joyous and not so fearful. And that's kind of my passion now, is to say, I think I have this, I was so into meditating that one, Portrait Society, Christine had asked me to do the Portrait Society, and I turned her down. And I was like, no, I don't want to go to Orlando. And then maybe a month later, I was in this deep meditation, and I felt so overwhelmingly powerful that I needed to contact Christine. And I said, Christine, I need to come to the Portrait Society and I need to talk. And she said, well, we're all set, we have every little segment set, but you could do the Sunday morning. And I was like,
wow.
Isn't that perfect? I go, that kind of is the most perfect thing. Now, of course, it was canceled, but I was letting you know about sitting and listening and knowing that there's an impulse that is going to come to you, and it will be so powerful that you will not be able to stop it. You will know it's right. And I felt that I needed to be more public or more open. And it was almost like I was channeling for like 8 months straight. Every time I'd meditate, I had a pen and paper and I was just pouring stuff out. Like it was like I couldn't even stop. I thought, no, I should keep breathing. Oh, I can't write. Oh no, I have to keep writing. And I don't know.
You have those notes, right?
Huh?
You have those notes. You're gonna
Yes,
share
I do. And maybe I'll write a short, something with them. But it's like, I just feel this incredible need to tell people that it doesn't have to be hard. And I wish I'd had a mentor to tell me that. It gets me welled up a little bit, because painting should be joyous. There are tools, there are things that you can do that make it a little bit easier. Once you get the technical, then the imagination comes, then who you want to express, how you want to
And
say
that,
what you say.
yes, and that's a really important point, and that's what MFA is all about. It's you want to get the technical stuff, but what you're touching on is really great too. But on the technical stuff, I was asking you earlier about some of these big moments, as an artist, and for me, I was really good at drawing since I was, in grade school all the way to junior high, and through art school, and it wasn't until I met this mentor. He's like Yoda. He's like this, hunched over with a Karl Marx beard. His name was Rennie Bruin. And he was the first one to taught me about light and shadow.
Mm-hmm.
He said there's, 6 points of light and shadow. Like right now, you got the light shining on me. That's light. This is shadow. This is cast shadow. That's 3. Halftone is 4. Highlights 5. And then reflected light. If I do this, and bouncing light 6. And then accent dark is 7. I've never heard of that. Before that, I would just look at a face. I'm like, there's a face. I'm going to try to draw the face. I'm going to try to get the likeness without seeing that. And once I understood that, I'm like, oh my God, what else have I not seen at all?
Lighting is so important.
Well, yeah, well, that's understanding of just one thing, but he gave me 8. That's one visual approach. That's one kind of lighting. But when you have overcast lighting, you have what's called local tone, which is what Van Gogh did, what Degas did in his prime, and nobody, and the Japanese prints are all like that. And so it's a different philosophy of, and that's what I teach. I can break down painting and all throughout art history and talk about it in a very logical, mechanical, intelligent way. But before that, art was a mystery. What the hell is Jackson Pollock? Why is Van Gogh doing what he did? And Van Gogh didn't even really understand what he did. But anyway, that's the little aha things that now I can teach a workshop and see somebody who's been painting for 20 years, and I can see exactly what they're missing. And in 5 minutes, you could say, what? And that's the kind of thing that I love in sharing these ideas.
Yeah, that's amazing too. Like you say, like I feel that teaching all of a sudden has imprinted in me things that I'm telling people, and I'm going, oh my gosh, where is this coming from? Like, how did I even know this? Like, I feel like it's saying it out loud to people and teaching them and seeing their aha moments has then all of a sudden been like, right. Yes. And it helps you then, be a teacher to yourself and help you remind you of these things. So it's like this great symbiosis. And just the mere fact of teaching, then I feel like then I learn so much, which is, everyone says about teaching. But I mean, the whole thing about lighting and, I wanted to go back to like when I was told that artists carry pencils and sketchbooks and it didn't resonate with me. It was because it was all about line. And it wasn't anything about light. There was nothing about talking about light. It was all about, well, you just outline things or you contour or you just do crosshatch. And it wasn't until I saw things as masses, as shapes, as puzzle pieces, until I saw one value next to another value. Then aha moments came because I never saw things in line. I always saw things as like one shape and then that actually helped me because that's how I was doing my drawings. I never thought about my paintings so much like that, but then it was like, right, aha. And believe me, I wish I had known some of these things early on. Like coming into myself about, like, I know there's mystery and shadow, but the accent, like you lead up to the accent, you lead up to the highlight, there's all these things that are like, I know this, but saying it out loud is still so exciting.
I think it's true. I think I've learned more from teaching than anything, because before I taught, I didn't really have to
analyze it.
Now teaching, you have to make it concrete to explain it to somebody, and I think that's very valuable. I think you can learn a ton. And the thing is, we are all teaching each other right now. This is almost unavoidable. Almost the young artists who are not shown in galleries can still make somewhat of a living, some really great living, just teaching to other people. And I think that's just great. And I think this is the community that I want MFA to become, that we all, and you know, this is a whole business side of it, but most of the profit from this is going back to the artists who are on it, sharing ideas. And so it becomes a community where you can ask questions, you can share ideas. And one of the things I want to do is with this artist to artist is I want to ask you, Susan, who would you like to interview, and have you do the interview of an
Oh
artist?
my gosh. Well, look at
Yeah,
you
think
came
about that.
back.
Yeah, I want you to think about that, and
Well,
hold
I
you.
think I know. Because my greatest influence, and I met her the exact same day I met Scott, is
Really?
Nancy Guzik. I met Nancy the exact same time I met Scott. They were standing next to each other. And she has been like a guardian angel to me. We talk all the time. She's on the same journey that I am. And,
Beautiful.
um,
Does she
I
do it?
always have felt something about her work that has
Oh,
done something for me. And she, yeah, people need to know more about her.
yeah. Okay, you're on. Do you think you can do it?
Yeah, of course.
Wouldn't that be fun? I would
Yeah.
love to hear. Nancy Guzik is one of the dearest people on the planet, and she's deeply spiritual. I
Mhm.
love talking to her, and she was one of the most excitable. I was painting next to her one time in Denver, and she just came down from Loveland. We had a model and we painted, and I can watch over, and I'm painting here, and I see her engaging in her painting. At one point, she stomped her foot like, ooh, she did something really that she loved, you know, and she just expressed it. Was the cutest thing in the world.
Yeah,
And
she
and
embodies creativity. And yeah.
I ended up with that painting. Hold on.
Oh my gosh. I love that you have it right there.
Because we traded. She took my painting and I took hers, and I got such the better deal. Look at this.
Oh, wow.
Is that
Gosh. That
killer?
looks like I mean, Zorn colors and everything.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
And I
That's,
got that was like, a couple hours.
yeah.
And
No,
it's
she's a miracle to me. I mean, she's pure art. I mean, her life, everything about her.
oh,
Yeah.
I can't wait. Okay, you're on. So talk to Nancy.
Okay.
We'll schedule something out there. But
Great.
this is so great. Do you know what? I know you have one video on MFA right now, and it's about edges and
Yeah,
form.
it's actually a block-in. It's showing people how to do 1 hour block-ins because I want to make things easy. So I tell people to time their work and think about things as simple, not details, just
Mhm,
big shapes and getting used to just painting and drawing at the same time.
mhm,
Don't worry about, technique. Don't worry about color. For me, it's about value. And so
mhm.
it's just getting used to how do you paint and draw at the same time, and then don't fiddle with it. Just big light and dark patterns. So it's a video of a portrait that I did. And it's sort of like a tutorial of how to do it in 1 hour.
Cool. And now I know we've got about three other ones lined up, and so you're taking them deeper into the painting process, I
Well,
imagine.
yeah, I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I'm doing drawings and I'm doing tutorial. I want to talk my book, my thing is the Patreon is that I'm going to show not only paintings and talk about specific paintings of people, like, other people's paintings, but books. And like I just did a video about, it was funny, you were just talking about halftones because, you know, people ask all the time, how do you paint a halftone? Is the halftone, what color should it be? Blah,
Mm,
blah, and I remember I love it. See all these aha moments, they're coming to me later on. I remember reading, I don't know if you ever read that book, Creative Illustration by Andrew Loomis.
mm,
It's actually this famous book that was done in like the 30s, and it was A to Z about light and composition and color harmony and how to, draw figures. And one of the chapters was on Howard Pyle, which was this famous
oh,
illustrator who taught
phenomenal.
a lot of illustrators. And he talks about halftones, and he's very old fashioned and stern, and he's very strict. But he talks all about how halftones are in the light and to remember that they're in the light, and that as students, they tend to overwork them and make them darker. So I talk about that. And that was an aha moment to me to realize that if we see texture, if we see color, if we see form, that means the light is hitting it. So halftones are in the light.
Right. How about that? How cool.
Yeah.
Now, oh gosh, there's a ton of things. I still want to talk to you on a more spiritual thing, and how you personally you've developed some of these concepts and ideas and how you've changed. Obviously, what you wrote was so philosophically beautiful at the beginning of the year. And I wish I could quote it. Do you
I
remember?
wish I could quote it. No.
But Foster is in the wing saying that we've got questions. That's
Oh, great. I love questions.
okay. All right, Foster, you want to come in and start throwing some questions at us from the viewers? So we'll wait till when he pops on. We'll do that. But
No, I love questions. Questions prompt things, um, it leads you in a way that you never thought you might go. So
I think I can easily talk to you for the next 3 hours.
I can talk forever. So
I know I could talk to you for the next 3 hours because we haven't touched on what kind of books we're reading yet, and I
I
really
know.
am interested in that. But
I think, that's also something that I think is important too, to share. Some of the ideas that we're talking about might be new to people. And I also just decided that this year that I was just not going to be scared. I was not going to be intimidated to actually talk about the other side of, being a more spiritual being, thinking about energy, understanding that,
yes.
there are things that you can control, that we are not just robots, that are, we can change things
Yeah.
through minds and through our, thought process. And so on.
We're going to talk a little bit about that, but let's answer a few questions. Foster, you have any questions?
You guys can see and hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right. Great job so far. Things are going really, really well. We have a lot of awesome questions. This first one's from John, and he's after my own heart with this. This is something you and I have talked a lot about, Kwong. I have a problem finishing a painting or a drawing. I have a lot of unfinished works, very few finished works. Have a problem with follow through. How do you get motivated to follow through with your finished works?
Well, I'll start this. Is this for me or does it matter?
You go.
It's
Okay.
open to both of you guys.
I think for me, finishing a painting or a drawing is actually the most difficult thing to do. And that's what separates the really great artists from a lot of very competent artists out there. And so it does require a lot of work, and it requires a lot of thinking and somewhat pain. But what I found that helps me is that in a completed work, that I can't add another shape to it without repeating myself. So if John is just beginning to paint, I don't know if he's watched any of my videos, because I talk about this, where I say that there's no such thing as background, that every shape is important. There's no negative or positive shape. It's all positive. And that a painting or a drawing is about the process of creating shapes. Now, form implies three-dimensionality, but a painting doesn't have to have form unless that's what you're interested in. So to finish a painting means when you get there, you're aware of everything that happens in a drawing or a painting, every area, every color, every value. And when you become sensitive to all of those elements, then you can make the decision how to finish it. But as long as you're thinking foreground, background, you might be in trouble, because then there's a lot of space that's unaccounted for. Now, you could do a vignette, like you see Richard do some of these heads vignette, and he'll do a brushstroke, and that brushstroke breaks the canvas into these two beautiful shapes, and that becomes shapes. So they're not just random brushstrokes. So it's a kind of a long answer to a.
Susan, how do you?
Yeah, really, really beautiful. The fact that not repeating, things and that there is no background, because a lot of times people get focused on, I don't know how to finish a background. I don't know how to finish a background. And I'm thinking, well, that's, not what the question is. But on the practical side, I'm going to say that it is very difficult to finish paintings. I rarely finish them without any sort of deadline. So I understand that problem. I do. I sympathize with you. There is an issue. If you don't have accountability, why finish things? So you need either give yourself personal accountability by making yourself do something where you have to show people it, to finish it. Okay. One thing is I always ask, a friend or somebody, and I say, hey, is there anything that stands out to you? Because I become blinded to my own value issues. I become blinded to my own shapes. And So a layman will definitely see something that I won't see, and because I've been staring at it too long. So that's one. Another thing that I always do on every single piece of work is there, it's probably about 90% done, and you're in that stage where you're just like, I could be fiddling this for another 3 months. I don't know what to do with it. What I do is I sit about 10, 15 feet away from my painting with a notepad, and I write down 15, no more than 20, but I literally will write down, I'll say one, and I'll go, and you become your own teacher. To become the best artist you want to be, you have to have the ability to critically analyze and say, all right, I do see that edge is too hard. Okay. All right. You need to be able to like analyze your stuff. So I'll say, number one, I need to soften, and I'll write it in a sentence form. I need to soften the left edge on the shirt going off to the right. I need to soften that. I need to have it go into the background. Number two, you study, and I go, I turn my paintings upside down. I look at them, upside down a lot, because that shows you when imbalance is happening with composition or stuff like that. And so I will write out like 15 sentences saying, I need to punch up the light on the left cheek, blah, 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 blah. I need to soften the edge from the hair going into the background, blah, 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 blah. And I will have 15 things. And then I will take the time to do that one thing. And then I will cross it off. And then I feel like, okay. And then I will go, number two, what's that? All right. Number two is like softening that. I will do it.
Yeah.
And then I will cross it off. And then I will get down to number 15. And then it's sort of like the finish line. You are then giving yourself a finish line to work towards, and you've critically analyzed your
really
work. And
great discipline. Now, I want to add something that helps me. Let's say you do all those things, but then at some point you don't know what to do. You get to a point where you don't know what to do. And I've found this to be true, and I preach this when I do a workshop, is that if you make a decision, it's always correct. If you get to a point where you don't know what to do, I don't know what value to make, and you're afraid to make a wrong value, you just choose a value and you do it. And what it is it gets you through the fear of doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You make a decision, you claim it, it's yours. Now, you can make another decision after that and change it, whatever. But it's much better than just sitting there paralyzed, like, oh my God, I'm going to mess this up.
Yeah.
Mess it up.
Well, that's a good, I've heard that before. And I mean, that can help. And when you know that something is almost trashable, like, then you just go hog wild. Another thing that really helps too is to see, I don't know, a lot of people, and me, you take a photograph of your work and you think it's done, right? And you look at the painting in your camera, all of a sudden something pops out. Yeah. So not only look at your painting upside down, not only ask a friend, not only do all these lists, look at your work in a thumbnail. So if you're working from a reference or not, but look at your work in a thumbnail, either on your computer or on your camera, and you will see something will pop out at you where it's like the larger shapes. You want to make sure that it's the larger story and not the tiny little details that,
Well, that's why it's so nice. I like having paintings, the luxury of not having to ship off paintings as soon as I do them. Because when they sit around and you're working on other things and you glance out of the corner of your eye, all of a sudden you see something that so it's a luxury.
So you guys are actually doing a great job segueing into the next question. And that is from Margaret Sue Turner Wright. And she wants to know, why is it that when you've been working on a painting for some time and then leave the studio and step back in, and five minutes later, or sometimes even the next day, you suddenly see what you did not see before to adjust in the painting? What do you think is actually happening in the, as she puts it, I brain?
Susan?
Well, you've just created space. It's like you had too much of that vision. I say it's like I become blinded. Like I become oversaturated to the images that are in front of me to where I can't differentiate anymore. So you just do need to look away. I have many things in progress at once. So I will turn them to the wall and then, a month later, turn them back. But I just think that you need a little space so that you can cleanse the eye, cleanse the palette.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think objectivity, being objective is really difficult for the small self to do, because you get locked into an idea and you think this is gotta work out, and And then all of a sudden, when you hit a brick wall and you go away and you come back, sometimes you see it. If you open yourself up, it's like asking questions. You open yourself up to other possibilities.
Great answers. Pam wants to know, she needs a mentor. How does that work?
Well, I do.
Pretty open-ended.
Well, that's important. You find people that you resonate with, and you do workshops with them or whatever. I do a mentoring thing where I do it through my Patreon. So people sign up, and then at the highest level, I have personal one-on-one sessions with them, and I give them homework, or we talk about things that they're doing, or I also, work on their work on my end in Photoshop. So they'll send me paintings, and then I will work on them with Photoshop, and then I will show them the image through layers of what I'm thinking or what I'm telling them, or like my ideas. And so we can explain it better because it's visual. But I send them images. We talk about books. It's a good, it's a great thing to have someone, if you don't live near other artists that you feel have the same, perspective as you, to seek them
I
out.
think that is so invaluable. What a luxury for us to be able to do this this day and age. I mean, with MFA, you can go on there and learn how to paint from realism to impressionism, landscape, whatever, if you have the time to do that. But to have to get to work with you and send you an image of what you're working on, and you critique it like that is, I mean, geez, I think the college art system, which was a scam and a criminal operation for 30, 40 years, doesn't have to be that way anymore. You don't need that stupid degree unless most people go into thinking they're going to come out and teach.
Right.
That's what the MFA is all about. A real MFA is a total understanding of painting. From what we're doing, you need to understand what Picasso did, what Jackson Pollock did. You need to know what everybody is doing in the contemporary world. And we're going to include all of that by the time I'm done with it.
I love the fact that you're being so diversified, because there are different niches and they kind of stay to their little group. And I love the fact that you are going to offer a huge, because you never know what will trigger something in somebody. It might, maybe someone's painting a certain way and they see somebody's work that you're going to offer them, and they're like, that is it. That is where my heart goes.
Right. Now, over time, we will dive into everything, and more importantly, we're gonna be able to ask questions. If somebody's BSing their way through it, I'm gonna put their feet to the fire, because so much of contemporary work, you go and it's so much art speak.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about this, So if you can't answer it, then whatever. But at least everybody will get a chance to listen to it.
Yeah.
And Pam, I would say from my personal experience, just buy them a lot of drinks, annoy them, and then obviously you're going to have to move to wherever they live, and you're set up. So it's not a big deal. It's just a 180-degree life shift you have to take, and then also you need to have a really healthy liver to make it through the first year or two. It's going to be a lot of social drinking. Next question is from Jared Brady, and this question is BS because he's not hitting a plateau, but he says he's feeling like he's hitting a growth plateau, and he knows he should. I mean, he's amazing. He knows he shouldn't be comparing himself to others, but it can be difficult with so many other young artists that are growing so fast. Do you have advice for staying motivated and avoiding comparing yourself to others?
Yeah, wow. Do you know Jared's work, Susan?
I have seen it on Instagram. He's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Jared came to me fresh out of high school. It's still in high school. And he was really skilled and really humble and sweet. And he's taken a workshop or two with me. But then in the last year, he just blown my mind how fast he's growing. This is what's happening to the art world, is exponentially. And if you're one of the old guard who used to guard your secrets and all this stuff, you're going to be just left in the dust. These young artists are amazing. And I feel like I'm thrilled to watch it. Actually, I think it's wonderful.
Well, it keeps you on your toes because you feel the excitement. You know something's out there. You know it's on the verge. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of like building something up. And you know, all I'd have to say to him is that it's perfectly natural, and that our knowledge mentally always comes before our hands ability, and that you know, if he had such a growth spurt, you can never keep that going. In fact, enjoy, savor. Don't think so much that it's always going to be like that, because life, he's so young. I mean, you and I know there's ups, there's downs, there's curves, there's everywhere. And there's going to be times when, for whatever reason, you are burnt out, or you just feel like, you know, you are plateaued. But that is the organic way of art. That's a rose, you know, the sprouting up of a stem, and then chaos, 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 and then it blooms. And you have to realize that that's life. That if you're feeling this, that something great is going to happen.
Yeah.
You are ready and primed, but just keep it calm. You know, just realize that you are ready for a blossoming. Your bloom is going to come, but we all do that. That's nature. We grow, and then we skim and we float, and you work on what you know, and then knowledge, and then you grow more. So
Yes. What you know, one of the best quote, I'm a golfer, and one of the best quote came from this book called The Little Red Book, and by Harvey Pinnock. And he died at 90 something, and he wrote this little wonderful little sayings. And in the book at the beginning, he dedicated to his teacher, who's told him originality came not from doing that no one else has done before, but doing what you know is true. And to go along with what you said, and I thought it was so brilliant. I remembered it. So Jared, I'll answer this for Jared, and I can answer it to him directly because I know what he knows. That in the early stages, what you're doing, Jared, you've developed an ability to learn how to see nature. You understand light and shadow. You've studied with me enough to understand local tone, which you haven't really explored yet. So you're learning to paint from life, and you've almost got it to where there's not a whole lot for you left to learn, except getting better at it. But you also know that there are 4 different light types that you can play with when you paint from life, from nature, right? So you have local tone, light and shadow, silhouette, and form, which is what Jojo O'Keeffe did. But as you grow, you will be exploring the abstract visual elements, which is line, shapes, value, color, texture, and edges. And you can explore a whole vocabulary, symphony, orchestration using those elements, exploring each one on its own. And when you're ready to do that, that's how when you explore it on your own, you won't be copying anyone, you know? So you can look what people are doing, but when you're exploring on your own, how many different ways have you tried light and shadow? You've only done one. You could do that in a lot of different ways. So when you explore it, don't copy other people. Just see what it means to you. You'll break out of it like that, and you'll grow. You're going to be your own artist when you do that. So I have no worry about where you're going to go. Your future is so bright. It's awesome.
I know I'm not supposed to be answering these questions, but I do feel strongly about this, that this question is all about comparing yourself to others. And I really don't think you should be. You know, this is your journey in art. So you're painting to be the best version of yourself, and comparing yourself to other painters isn't going to get you anywhere unless it sets off some light bulbs or some things you can borrow from.
It's very difficult. I'm not comparing, but you're easily influenced. You see a Richard Schmidt or a Fession or, you know, a Sargent, and it's so beautiful and alluring that you can't help but to be influenced by that.
Well, to clarify, it's not a competition, right? You're not directly competing with other artists.
Right.
Like, just make the best work you can. That's going to ultimately be better than anything you do based off of a sense of competition.
Well, that goes back to Susan's conversation earlier when she was growing up and learning to paint and feeling insecure because that's all about comparing. And that's the small self that does that. Whenever you find yourself comparing, it's always the small self.
Well, and I've had difficulties with social media and my nervous system. You know, I have definitely found times where I could feel bad after flipping through something and, questioning, why do I feel bad? And it all comes down to, thinking that other people's lives are easier, that it's easy, that maybe their paintings are better, or that somehow they have gotten into the flow and figured out who they are and I still don't know who I am. I mean,
Mm,
I take sabbaticals. I think
that's
it's
good.
there's so much out there that there's a lot of noise. So talking about any sort of asking or sitting or listening, it has to be done away from that. It has to be done away from Facebook and Instagram and
Mm,
your
mm,
computer. So
point.
those are things that if you witness yourself being drawn to it like a drug, if you feel that pull of like, I need to know what other people are doing, I need to know what other people are doing, that is the time when you start to evaluate that then that's unhealthy. It's not working for me. It doesn't help, it's not a helpful thing that feeds me. It only, deplenishes me. So I would, maybe start to say, I'm not going to look at it today. Just, I'm gonna do a fast. I'm going to see
Mm,
what my own like voice tells me and not hear anybody else's.
mm. Nice.
Wonderful answer. So new question, new thing. Alan and Helen Spiney want to know, when you paint over a period of time, how do you keep your painting from looking overworked?
Mm,
And I guess to rephrase it, if you're painting for many sessions, how do you keep it from looking
uh,
like it's many sessions and it's still kind
yeah.
of, alla prima or fresh?
How do you handle that one, Susan?
Well, it's hard. I mean, I look at most of my work in my life and I would say it's overworked. So, it's
What are you talking
no,
about?
I mean,
Talking me
I'm
up.
still I'm still trying to figure out, how do you have thick and thin? How do you have, mystery? How do you have accents and yet leave a lot of, the detail as out?
Yeah.
How do you edit? What do you leave out? Those are all the questions that, I've been, sometimes I think my paintings were too literal. I was too stuck to my reference or to the model up there, or whatever's in front of me. I could not get past, what I was seeing and then not changing it.
Mm,
So how would I say that? First of all, I work on things many times over and over and again. Now,
yeah.
how do you do that? People in the past can sand down their work, or, you know, I would just say, to start off, for me, if you feel that that's an issue with you, start off as thin as possible. Think about your shadows as mysterious and thin as possible, and only have your lights be thick. Now, if you can keep that, then that will lead you to being able to work longer on it. And I mean, okay, so what would you say, Kwon?
Well, actually, while you were answering that, it gave me an idea. And that is, I think when a painting works,
Hmm.
let's not talk about when a painting doesn't work, but when a painting works, it has a sense of maximum variety or interest. Variety is what creates interest. So that implies that when a painting feels overworked, that means you've said things over and over the same way,
Right.
right? So, so if you have variety of edges, interesting variety of edges, that means you don't have, there's what's the right word? Enough variety that implies
Mhm.
it doesn't the same, it moves and changes. You have enough variety of shape sizes, so the drawing is not a bunch of little pockets of equally said details everywhere. One thing leads to another. Then texture, thickness, and thinness from one place to another. If the whole thing is thin, it can also look overworked. But if you have variety of thick and thins, then they speak to each other. So for me, the key element there is I will work a painting and rework it and be brutal enough to just literally wipe it all out. Not wipe it out, just paint over the entire thing so nothing is left. I keep doing that until it feels good. And when it
Well,
feels right, you
one
know,
thing I wanted to say about that is that all these aha moments are coming to me, is that, as artists, especially people who don't have a lot of confidence, we tend to work things and keep working on them, hoping that magic will happen, that somehow if we keep licking the canvas, if we keep adding paint, and you just said that you have the ability to wipe out and repaint. A lot of people don't have that. And I used to not have that also, because there was this sense that I put so much energy into a painting
Right.
that I felt that it was precious and that I was just, no matter what, going to beat this painting to submission. Like I am going to paint it till it submits.
Mhm.
And that you get to a point to where that is so stupid, to where you realize that you're wasting your time. But I mean, for years I would do that. I would overpaint and just think, oh my God, but I'm just going to put more energy and more time into it.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing an artist when I was quite young do what you did. Like they had started painting and then, 2, 3 hours into it, didn't like it and washed it off. And that was such a shocking thing for me to witness because of their confidence. Like they knew that they could do it again, or they knew internally it wasn't correct. I didn't have that ability to start over because I felt I put too much time into it. So to answer your question, it's a lot about questioning. Sometimes paintings are what they are, and maybe you need to learn what you did from that and start over and learn and do things differently to get a different result. Because if you feel your paintings are becoming too heavy or too overworked or this or that, don't hold on to them so much like you can't do it again or do it better. Think of it as a learning lesson and
Yes.
give yourself the gift to know you can do it again.
Mm.
I mean, if I could just impress upon you, that would like lift a huge weight off of you.
Yes. And I think for me, literally, I feel this way now, that the joy is in the discovering
Yeah.
what I don't know rather than hanging on to what I think I know. So I actually enjoy it when a painting doesn't work. I just like, let's see what else it can do. And I actually have a great time at that, you know. That's how you,
Well, there you go. You've mastered that beautiful energy. A lot of us are striving for that.
it's nothing to strive for. You just have to
It's
let
just
it
it's
go.
striving for the ability to let go. It's the
Okay. All
ability
right.
to know that it's okay and that it's, to feel light about it and to realize that it is all about, oh, well, let me try it differently. Isn't this exciting? Instead of being stuck on like, oh, I really wanted it to look exactly like that photo. It doesn't look exactly like that photo. Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I can't make it look exactly like that photo. Where that energy of fear and, not trusting yourself and overworking is coming out in that painting. So release that. I mean, that's the whole thing of like releasing all these, unwanted expectations.
Of course, we're implying that, everybody has enough skill to do that, because if you're struggling with just drawing, that conversation becomes very difficult. Because actually, I would say 70% of the paintings that don't work out for me, there's something wrong with the drawing. And it sounds crazy, but I think I would know better than that. But I still will be like, my drawing's off somewhere. I just placed it badly or whatever. But other times, it just the composition wasn't what I thought it would be. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Foster. What else we got?
Yeah. Paul Who on Deborah. So Deborah Dawson asked about the quote for the big self, small self. Paul Who.
Oh, Selig, Selig, and be prepared to get your mind blown.
Gonna say be prepared.
Be prepared to get your mind blown, because
He's
this
a
is
very interesting guy.
there is no way this guy can be faking this. It's amazing. I'm reading this right now, and it is challenging me to face all of my fears, to realize that none of it is real, and it's trying to bring you to your highest self possible. The ego, literally, the ego is no longer a part of my. I don't play with it. I don't listen to it. It's just not part of who I am at all. Your automatic noise in your head that wakes up in the morning, starts worrying about stuff. That's your small self. It's
Yeah.
it's been driving the bus for a long time, and I just kicked it off the bus. Is no longer intelligent. So, and I know Susan's in the same. We haven't talked about it at all tonight, but I could tell that she's in the same.
I have shared Paul Selig with some people, and they do their eyebrows raise.
Of course, the eyebrows raised.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you think about it, because he is doing this in front of live audience. There's no way to
Yeah.
fake it. So
Yeah.
you can take whatever you want.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of amazing people out there that there's so much information that if you feel drawn towards it, you will find it.
yes. And actually, what you said earlier, I thought was so beautiful. When you ask the question, you will get an answer. But if you don't ask, you're not going to get anything, period.
Right.
And
So
so,
can you guys name the book again?
well, no, there's like a series of 6 books, and he's all over YouTube anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't actually read one of his books. I've just seen a bunch of his interviews and his YouTube.
Oh, no, I've read all 6 books.
videos.
They're amazing.
Yeah, I bet you they're easier. I bet you I would start off with a book.
Yeah, I would recommend reading them, but you have to watch a video because you think, what do I have to see? And then
Yeah.
you see what I mean. But okay.
So what's the name of the book by Tom Selig?
Tom's
Did y'all bring up a Tom? I just cut.
Paul Selig. Paul Selig.
Paul Selig.
Yeah, Paul Selig he's on YouTube. He's got the book of Worth and Knowing, the book of Mastery. The latest one is called the book on Realization, or no, Alchemy, and then Realization. There's a number of them, but they're really wonderful. They're really different. Just like, going way back when, The Course in Miracles was a book that I picked up by accident. It took me 15 years to digest that book to where I understood it, and I could only read 1 page at a time. Like, what is this?
Course in Miracles is very intellectual, head oriented.
Yeah.
I'm definitely much more heart oriented. So I had a very hard time with those books.
Yeah. But there were the first, do you remember the very first? I had that book for 5 years. Somebody had it, and I finally opened it up one day, and I'm very much a spiritual searcher. I'm reading everything. And the first page, he said, everything that is real cannot be threatened. Everything that is not real or unreal doesn't really matter. Therein lies the peace of God. And that hit me like a 2x4 across the head. And like, whoa. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is about, but that made sense. So I started reading it, and it immediately, that was the first time I ever read the concept that the separation between there's only love and there's fear.
Right.
And the whole book went on to tell you why fear is not real. And
the first time I heard about that was the book called Conversations with God.
Yes.
I remember it was in like 2000.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the first books that, that idea that every thought was a creation. I remember reading that sentence. And before that, I had it was such a revelation, aha moment of like, every thought is a creation, right? Like, and it takes you a lifetime to like understand that, but yes.
There's negative or positive, right?
Yeah, and that it's either based in fear or it's based in love. And then to like think and to sort of see like your habits and how you were, like all these programming, and that all these thoughts that would come to you without even understanding, and then witnessing them, and then seeing your thoughts as, they can lie, and that they aren't really you, and that they're telling you stories that you can disagree with, all this stuff. So it is fascinating when you start to read something and it seems so like obvious now, but when the very first time you saw it as almost like this baby brain, and everything is new and everything is exciting and the world is different. And so there's a lot out there, and you just have to follow those impulses. You find them like listening to a YouTube video, and then that leads you to something else, and that leads you to something else. And then knowing that is your inner guidance telling you that these are everything's in front of you for a reason.
Yes. The thing is, if you think you already know, then there's no conversation.
Right.
Okay. I have, I'm intimidated about this question because I'm not sure if I understand it.
Okay.
So Margaret Sue Turner, right? Please bear with me. Question for both of you. When beginning a figure painting, do you each favor rendering a shape abstraction or tonalism shapes to start with? So then I asked her to rephrase the terminology because I wasn't familiar with necessarily tonalism shapes. So then she said a second time, in the beginning of a figure painting, do you prefer rendering to start with or finding abstract shape or a tonalist approach or value shapes tonalist?
Okay. I think that I can answer that. And I think I understand what she means. First of all, I don't render it using lines. I hardly ever start a painting with lines. I think in terms of, drawing with value shapes. So like what, I think what Susan was implying earlier on, that makes so much more sense to me. So having said that, I don't just look at the figure as a value. I see all the values in the entire painting. I need to relate all the values in the entire composition first, and then decide where the figure fits into that. So the figure is just another piece of value, right? And sometimes if it's a light and shadow situation, like this value of the shadow on my face is connected to this value on the dark shirt. You know what I mean? So this value and the light is not the same relationship as that dark. So if I put my hand here, then that value shape becomes this. And if I move it over here and pull my arm down, then that value can connect to this painting in the background, and that hand connects to that value. So I think like that. I don't think arm, face. I think of value structure. So does that? I think that's
Totally. I love how you say that. And yeah, so for me, I am probably more inspired by strong light and dark. So when I think in abstract light and dark shapes, and I so yeah, so I would think of just like, yeah, value patterns. And I think it's like, it's so funny. While you were talking, I had this great answer, and now like I've lost it. But I think when people are trying to figure out and th're trying to pose models, what I
yeah.
want people to really understand
Hmm.
is that it takes a while to get something that triggers something within your body. So when you're playing with a model, you have a model up on a stand. I tell people all the time, don't just paint the first thing you see.
Yeah.
Really play with the light, move it around, have the model do different poses. You walk around the model, because what's happening is you are finding that impulse. You're finding something where all of a sudden the hair stands up on the back of your neck. And nobody can tell you what that is. Only you can say that this particular light source hitting this particular object is somehow tintillating you and putting something in you that says, I need to paint that. What happens is so many times people are painting in groups, and they walk up and there's just, so they want you to tell them, how would you make that model up there into a great painting? And then I have to explain to them, I wouldn't paint that. Like, that is not interesting to me. Like, there's no artistic value of someone sitting up there with an orange in their hand, looking straight at you with a white background and a white shirt, and they look dead. Like, you have to take control. You take reins of what you paint. The object of what you're painting, what you choose to say, is just as important as your technique. So be more proactive and take more choices, and do more experimenting with lighting, and take a whole day where all you do is just play with models and figure out what lighting is right for you. And if that's kind of confusing to you, well, then look at master paintings like Sargent or Richard, or people, different lightings, and then practice. Like, oh, they're using window light. Okay, I'm going to put a model next to a window, and I'm going to play and see what it's like. Or if it's overcast or spotlight, figure out what tells you that you cannot do anything but paint that painting. And so that's what I would say.
You're trying to find the excitement.
Yeah.
Let it speak to you. You got to be open enough to wonder. And really, I walk around most of the time just being completely open now and then your things will speak to you. But you also have to start. Sometimes you don't have an idea, and you could just start painting a stump or something, and next thing you know, new ideas will come at you. So the important thing is to be open, and also to just attack it.
Great. So now we have a question from Nancy Crawford. I keep hearing how an artist should focus on one genre, but when people ask me what I like to paint, my answer is anything with light on it. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Susan?
Well, I mean, I think you use every single medium. I don't use every medium. It's, that's a tricky question. So, like, are you known for a certain like genre, and so you feel like you want to experiment and you don't think people are letting you? Or are you better at one genre? Because most people I know that work in watercolor, charcoal, acrylic, oil, sculpture, landscape, people, still life, they are good at all of them because they understand that it's all about light and shape. Now, but so I guess I would like to know a little bit more behind that question. Like, I don't venture into acrylic, I don't venture into watercolor or sculpture or landscape that much, just because it's not what inspires me. It doesn't like make me get up in the morning. So
Hmm.
I guess if people are telling you that you should only work in one genre, I don't know why. I mean,
Yeah.
someone like you or even Scott or Richard Schmidt, I mean, you're like the people, who can do everything. So if you can do everything, do everything.
Hmm. I think the question is, why wouldn't you? Who's telling you that? I mean, the only reason why you would worry about that question, I think, is an idea that you might have of what might sell or how your reputation will rest on it. And that's the only reason why you would do something like that. But if you are actually curious and are excited to try something new, or or if you're a still life painter and all of a sudden you see a landscape or a figure that that excites you, you want to listen to that, because it opened a door to your creativity and your excitement. So
Well,
I
and
don't, you
I was
know,
just going to say, I really wanted to mention George Carlson
oh God,
because,
yeah.
first of all, so this is a man who is, elderly now, but he became famous doing pastel. And so he was huge in the 70s doing pastel for years, like a decade, and did New York City ballet dancers and did like in Native Americans and all this stuff, and was really big. And then he changed completely and did monumental sculpture for like 20, 30 years and became super famous doing that. And all he did was sculpture. And then there came a point where he physically, it was, he was kind of over that, done that. Physically, it was too demanding. Literally overnight picked up a paintbrush and is now a master landscape artist. And so
Amazing, like one
there's
of
no,
the best in the world.
exactly. And he's such an amazing person who has like literally only focused on one thing, became a master painter at that thing, did it till he felt like he didn't, was saturated, changed, and then put all his heart and soul into something else, and then did that until that was over with. And then now it's like, so you can change your genres. You can be whoever you want as long as it's like 100%.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said earlier that was so important, that changes in your life. It's listening to what you love rather than listening to this. That's a fear thought.
Mhm.
That's totally a fear thought. I should only do this. If you listen to what you really love to do, you follow that. That's the unknown question. You don't know where it's going to lead you, and that's okay. Unless if you're dependent on having to make a certain amount of money by selling this other stuff. I met George Carlson. I've known him for a long time, but Adrian and I got to drive through Idaho and actually stayed with them for a night.
We
And
did too, yeah.
he is so gracious. And I asked him about the pastels actually, and he said, I was selling them all, and people were asking me, why didn't you keep doing them? He said, I said everything I could with them. And then he knew to stop and move on to something else that made him curious. So
Yeah.
that's the true art spirit. I think to follow an idea of a genre or a look to your work, it smacks of something not true to me. As
Yeah.
long as it interests you, great. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well,
And
Kwong, I just want to say that maybe you never had the type of fear that that some other people have. Like Scott's never had that. Richard has never had that. But I've had that. So I understand what it's like to have that nagging voice.
mm,
And it's easier said than done to be like, don't listen to that. Don't do that. It takes a while for, first of all, you have to admit it. You have to actually see your
mm,
choices are directing you in certain ways, understand that it's too painful to go keep doing that.
yeah,
And then there are ways to change it. There are ways. It's not overnight where you just go, I'm going to love myself. Oh, I'm not going to listen to other people's voices. Oh, I'm not going to worry about that. Um, So I just want to put that in there.
Thank you. Yes.
And also, guys, I'd like to say that we only have one more question here. So if there's any more last minute questions, please fire them into the chat. But Tina asked, how do you decide between hard and soft edges without hard looking overworked?
I think Susan's the one to answer that.
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, it has a lot to do with, for me, since it's mainly figurative work, you look at form and you think about, is form turning fast or is it turning slow? Is it, is there bone or is there flesh? With fabric, you look, you can see where's the light direction. So once I tell people to not worry about edges in the beginning. Just think about contrast. Just think about posterizing and what's in light and what's in dark. Then you walk over that definition, that, mountain peak of where the light and the shadow starts, and you start to analyze, is this a hard structure that's turning abruptly, or is it a soft structure that's turning soft? So then you do that. And then thirdly, you think about design, and then you figure out a bullseye and you start to go, okay, where do I want the viewer to look? Where am I leading them? And then because of that is the area, then you can then play with pushing things into mystery and making things more important. But in general, hard edges are where something's turning more abruptly.
Yeah.
Or contrast or something. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Now this is a weird question.
Kwong, did you want to say something?
I have something very important to say, Foster.
Fine, go ahead.
I saw
Kwong,
the wheels turning.
Yeah, no, there's if you think in terms of soft and sharp edges according to a focal point, like you're saying, that obviously the focal point is the sharpest point, and then it radiates from there. So Rennie, my mentors, told me this idea a long time ago that I thought was so brilliant. Never heard it since or then. But let's say if I hold my hand up like this and you focus on my hand, my face is peripheral vision now, right? But if you focus from that to my nose, this hand is peripheral vision. So if the camera actually lies, if you don't understand what's happening, because it makes everything equally sharp, but your eye can only focus on one spot at a time. So I can make any part of this image here the focal point, because then from there, the edges go away. But for me, on a compositional level, edges work this way for me. So imagine you're driving by a landscape at 80 miles an hour, and you say, whoa, that's beautiful. And you glance out and you put your hand back on the steering wheel. You just saw the whole image. And if you analyze it, you'll see, what did you really see and what did you not really see? And that's how I determine my soft and sharp edges in a painting, because the really obvious things that jump out, that's where usually the sharp is sharp and the most contrast is. And where it's too subtle to see, that's where you can do a lot with the soft edges. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the form thing really applies to light and shadow. You can really study that, and the larger forms tend to be a softer turn. But the real tricky things, Susan, is like I've seen you do figures where even when it's a sharp dark against light, you can still play with soft edges around that. Right? Yeah. And that's exploring. You just have to explore it. But for the most part, those two principles really help me along. Okay, Foster, go ahead.
All right. So this one is a juicy one. When I learn terms that teach, I switch brain sides. I lose my paint feelings. It's hard to listen to the helpful teachings I get on terminology. How can I incorporate the terms to learn?
Okay, you're going to have to repeat. Did you understand that?
I just read it verbatim.
Well, I think what happens is that people use different words for different ideas. Like sometimes people have different words for halftones or different words for compositions. And so this person is probably more analytical, and
right.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to give an answer to that, like over this kind of platform. You'd have to really show them visually what you're saying, and like say, this is, because we all have to be on the same we all have to be on the same page when we're talking about certain words or terms.
Mhm.
And then if you believe one thing about this word and I believe another thing, then, we have to agree. So those are things that you have to kind of figure out in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's good. But I didn't really quite understand the question, Foster.
I would say, and I'll read it again, but if the terms aren't resonating in your own practice, you need to break each term into an exercise and do it until you have a visual and fundamental understanding of each smaller element. Words mean nothing until you rehearse what they mean. If
Right.
it's value, you got to practice value. If it's a half tone or whatever, you need to, color theory. The only way to get there is with practice. And again, Kwong, when I learn terms that teach, I switch brain sides. I guess that's going to the left and right side of
Okay.
brain ideas. I lose my painting feeling. It's hard to listen to the helpful teachings I get on terminology. How do I incorporate the terms to learn?
Okay. I would say that there's a difference between learning terminology and learning and understanding what they mean. So once you understand something, it should liberate you. It shouldn't. If you learn rules based on the words and what those words mean, without full understanding, you're going to be afraid to. It's going to bog you down. But if somebody talks about an idea and you understand the idea, you shouldn't have to be bogged down at all by words. It should be here at that point. Does that make sense?
All right. Last question. Sharon Tarr asked, the great illustrator teacher Harvey Dunn said that we need to listen to the painting. It will tell us what to do. Do you agree with this concept?
Absolutely. Ultimately.
Well, sure, but I still am learning how to listen, and I didn't know how to listen up until now. So, questions, things like that, it's like I always feel are a little lofty, feel the color, know it's right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that kind of teaching because, I used to get very angry when I would hear self-help people say, just love yourself. Just, just believe or this or that. I'm like, well, if I knew how to love myself, I wouldn't be listening to you, so I feel like there are steps, and that's, I have bigger ideas, but I also I'm so strong that no, we can't teach like that. You can't just tell someone you're doing a demo and say, well, you feel it, it will come to you. No, I want people to have, those are ideas that come after you know something. And then it's a higher level of understanding. But there are ways to go about it without, being so cerebral.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I say yes to that. It obviously it is yes, but here's the thing: you have to know the vocabulary that you're listening to. What are you listening to? Just thin air? You have to, and I break it down real simply. I mean, all of painting, doesn't matter what kind of painting you do, with abstract or realism or light and shadow, you're dealing with shapes, value, color, texture, and edges, and line if you introduce that. So when you listen to a painting, it'll tell you what to do. It means that you are listening to those elements. What is the values telling you it needs? What's the color tell you it needs?
The relationships.
Yes, the shape, which is drawing. So that's what you're listening to. And then once you have all of that, it may be other choices that will create a feeling that's not apparently in front of you if you're painting from life, So yes, and at the same time, you have to understand what it is that you're listening to.
Right, because I think things like that, people then feel that they aren't smart enough or that they weren't touched. Like, I guess I'm not touched, so I don't know. I can't be a great artist because I don't know how to feel a color. And I guess I just, I think there's more practical ways to go about teaching art.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, there's a lot more I want to talk to you about, but this is so great. This is a great way to launch this artist to artist.
Yeah, no,
I'm so excited to talk to you about. Maybe we can get a chance to do it. Maybe revisit somewhere down the line again
I
And
would love it. Now that we've gotten some stuff out of the way, it's like we can get more into the nitty gritty. But I like the idea that it's almost a little bit yin and yang. We're very similar, but there's a little bit of an edge. Like we have some differences, which is good because you can't, otherwise there won't be a good conversation. Because I mean, you come at it and I at it at a place where I don't know, like me projecting onto you, which I maybe a lot of people do, feels like you have a certain ability to be above it all, to not have such stresses or such fears. And so life seems easy for you. And I'm just, so that's the perception I have, which may be true or not, but there are other people out there that art is just as important, but maybe there's a little bit more of a ragged edge. There's a little bit more of a twisted lane that we go down to figure out. And that's our language, is like figuring out how to say what we need to say, but it's a little more sticky.
mm, well, I think I can tell you that I was blessed with one thing, and that is ignorance. Growing up, I felt no pain. Like Adrian asked me, he said, well, what was your goal? What was your plan to become, you go in life? I said, I never had a goal. I never had plans, but the word failure was never part of my vocabulary, but neither was the word success. I never had that in my head. So I came from Vietnam and we didn't have any money, and I used to mow the lawn and saved every penny I did. And when I started out of art school, I started to make a little bit of money. It was just like everything was a win. Every little thing, if I made a little money, I saved the money. I made a little money, I saved the money. And I never really had a thought I should be here in 2 years or 3. I just was excited just to paint every step of the way. And somehow along the way, it worked out on a professional level. But a bigger question for me than just art, and that's what I'm seeing in your life right now, is I always wanted to know what the answer was. I've always struggled, and in the beginning, I was I was raised Buddhist, but nobody in Vietnam knew what Buddhism was all about. They were just Buddhists, but nobody understood what Buddha was about.
Mm-hmm.
Then I became a Christian, and I dove into that wholeheartedly. And one day I came out and asked questions about that too. I said, okay, if you wanted me to really understand this, you're going to have to tell me. And I left it at that. And so I've discovered all my entire life was one series of question after another. And the answers have revealed themselves in such a beautiful way. And it wasn't smooth. But what I've learned is that fear is not real. It took me 20 years of reading that book, and then other things come in to show me that is not real, to where now, once you really understand that, it is easy, because fear is the thing that creates difficulty. And really, fear is just an idea. Like what Foster's afraid of, I'm not afraid of at all. And what I'm afraid of, he has no idea what, so it's easy to see someone else, right? And see what all their problems and their projections are all, how weird that all is. But that just points to the fact that none of it is real. It's real to the person who wants to believe that it's real,
Right.
and it affects you very deeply. But my question about life goes step in step in step with my painting development. There's no question. So
Yeah.
as the
It
more
can't help but do that. Yeah.
yeah. And so now I don't care what happens to a painting, because I've
Yeah.
developed my skill enough to say, well, it's going to be a challenge to see if I can fix this, but I don't hang on to anything. So
Well, and I don't either. I've talked a lot about fear, but it's mainly because I know that other people consciously or unconsciously are dealing with it. And I believe that I have left it behind. So I feel very liberated. And I don't bring it up to hash up history. I bring it up to tell people that, when you look at someone like you who has this sort of magical life, it seems as though it's completely unattainable. And people might think that about me. They project onto me or whatever. And just to let you know that I I understand that there are ways of getting out of it. So I also, this is just something that's very important to me, is that in the future and from now on is to talk about not only that we have it, but that you can get rid of it, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that there is a way of changing and pivoting to, little steps to be more confident in your art, to, understand that everything is going to be okay, that not to be afraid of lack of money, that there are things that there is a way out. And so that's very important to me, because I don't feel the fear anymore either. And so I bring that up just because we're in such a forum right now that I know a lot of people are listening to this, and some people might really, that might ring true to them.
Yes. And I think to add one more thing to all of that is whether you're in fear or not in fear, whatever you are absolutely where you need to be. It's perfect, actually. And
well, you're here listening to this right now, so it's perfect for you to understand that you are brought this to you to now understand that you don't need it anymore.
Yeah, right. But
I believe it's all perfect timing.
That's right. But I love the, if you go think back about the time, how exciting it was to have these little discoveries along the way as an artist. You all of a sudden you can do one thing a little bit better this, whereas you struggled with it last month.
Right.
It won't be any better. Like right now, when I have a good painting, it doesn't feel any better than when I did 20 years ago when I had a little, victory over a painting. Yeah. It's really just the excitement all along the way. It's perfect.
Exactly. And the little victories, I love you said the word victory, because I say that all the time. The little victories are what makes it so delicious. And not to want more than the tiny little morsels of just these little savory moments, because not, it's only what's right in front of you that's important. It's nothing, some magical imaginary, success medal or whatever. It's just what's right in front of you. Are you enjoying the moment? Are you excited to wake up in the morning? Is painting what you think about? Do you love sharing it? Do you have friends you paint with? That type of thing that that it fulfills you is completely a success story.
Cool.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Okay.
What's the coolest unexplained thing that you can't explain that's ever happened to you?
Come on, Kwong.
Go away, Foster.
I know.
I'm down on you on that question.
You ask me questions, and then sometimes like the answers drop in. Hello?
Foster gone away. Go ahead.
I was like, all I saw was this little picture. Sometimes talking, then all of a sudden you get this download of like, well, okay, what's an unexpected thing that has happened?
Unexplained. An unexplained event or things that have happened to you that you can't.
Well, I've had lots and lots of little ones, and I sometimes have fun piecing together little bits of this path, this yellow brick road. And I'll look back and I'll go, you know what? Oh my gosh, that was such a turning point. Oh my gosh, that came to me out of nowhere. That was such a blessing. Oh, and that led to that. No, but probably, like I've mentioned a few times, is that like 3 years ago, I feel that I had so much fear that honestly my spirit couldn't take it anymore, and like life and circumstances and things came to me to where there was almost like this bomb that went off, and I met people that changed my life. I started meditating extremely seriously, and I mean, to where a point where now I have this close group of friends that are techs, and we talk about meditation and we share things and revelations and new ideas and videos and books, and we talk to, when we have an insight, we call each other up and we talk about these new things. Like we say about art, we have these little victories in art. Well, in life, all of a sudden you'll have these little knowings that you didn't know before. And it's almost like before and after, and anything now, is less scary, is less this, and you can giggle at life and you can go, oh my gosh, look at this amazing thing that's happened to me. So now that I can do more expansion, thank you for that issue that I had to deal with. Thank you for that person coming into my life. Thank you for problems with painting that now I get to evaluate and discover new ways of like making things better. And and this whole thing about what's happening, I mean, we're not going to talk about politics, but just the fact that we've had to be quarantined is such I'm self-employed and I've always been kind of a loner. So it's an interesting thing. Now I have this beautiful platform that never would have happened if I didn't have to stay
Wow.
home. I
Wow.
would not have this glorious ability to meet people and touch them and them
Wow.
touch me and feel a purpose that I feel like it's been leading, like my whole life has been leading up to this point to where now any sort of issue I had or, you know, any sort of magical moment that happened to me has now led me to now where it's
Mm.
all supposed to have happened. Like you said, everything is perfect. It's all meant to be. I can't even envision anything else now. So I feel like it's been a blessing because necessity has forced me to do things I didn't think I could do.
Mm.
And now here I'm talking to you about online and helping and tutorials and art and spirituality, where I mean, it's probably, I mean, it will be now, this will be like the moment that I will know before and after. So it's
Cool.
pretty exciting.
Well, that's a darn good answer. Thank you.
Oh,
So much fun. Really, I can't wait to talk to Scott next. And, I've got lined up, Ron Hicks I'm going to do an interview with Ron
cool.
Hicks, who I've seen an amazing transformation. There's a young lady named Tiffany Meng, who is an amazing digital painter, but also she does gouaches that are this size and they're perfect structure every time. She doesn't know how good she is, but I'm going to talk to her about how she she's did some bad photographs that she worked from. That didn't photographs I look at, I'm like, I never paint that, but she turns them into, she makes decisions to make them really beautiful. So that's another one. And I have Lori Putnam in the line and James Richards and some landscape painters. And then I can't wait. I think this format's going to be great.
It
I have
is.
to talk to a paleontologist who's a painter. I want to get that involved. And one of my friend, I hope to get him in. He's the director of the
Maybe
Natural.
you can talk to Paul Selig.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I
Why,
reach out to him.
why
He's not
not?
doing much. He's in Hawaii.
Really? He's not doing much.
Well, he got quarantined while he was like in Costa Rica and he never went home to New York. He just
No
went to
kidding.
Hawaii.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And it's about making, being open to all possibilities. And as an artist, I think that's really important. And the thing is, you can learn about the technical stuff. We're all sharing it right now. It's so easy to get, I see artists learning so fast on this format, on the internet and workshops and so on. But what you and I are talking about, this deeper, where do you go after that, which is really exciting. That's the exciting part, isn't it?
It is. No, it
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. It all just takes, do you have patience and do you want to do it every day? Is that the thing you wake up wanting to do? Do you make time for it? I know I have a lot of friends who want to be artists full time, and yet there's always something. There's always something they say yes to. And I feel like, it's like, but yet I know they're yearning to be artists. So it's a decision. You do have to make a commitment to it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of fear involved with that too, because
Mhm.
that's a big undertaking because it takes everything you've got to be a good artist. So it's most, but it's so much fun.
It is. It is.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you,
I
Juan.
look forward to talking to you again. Actually, I think.
Okay. Well, hugs to Adrian, and I wish you all the best in your beautiful new place. And it's exciting. New beginnings are
Oh, yeah.
just delicious. So
There's a lot of things happening that you'll find out later.
okay. Okay.
But talk to Nancy. Let's spread the word and see if we can create a fun forum here.
All
Thank you,
right.
everybody, for listening in. We really enjoyed it. Oh my gosh, it's been 2.5 hours. So no editing. So this is going to be available eventually be a wonderful archive on mfa.studio, of course. And so we'll go from there. So have a good evening. I'll go get some dinner.
Okay. Bye-bye.